Chapter 15-17. Han Fei found that this kind of line was not easy to remember, but a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Although it was not easy to remember, it was precisely because it was difficult to remember that this kind of thing could be traced and deduced. Sure enough, about an hour later, an inscription, Tao pattern, appeared in Han Fei's mind. In his eyes, information emerged. Tao pattern, unrated, note. Heavenly path pattern contains the mysterious truth of impermanence, and the rules of the great path are hidden in it. Observing the Tao pattern in the market can enhance the power of the soul and improve one's comprehension. As for arrays, the power will be doubled. This Tao pattern is incomplete and not very useful. Comprehension: 5/100 repair. 0/1 billion. After reading this information, Han Fei took a slight breath. Damn it! Is this thing really powerful? Not only does the heavenly path pattern contain the great path, but it can also be used as a visualization diagram? However, Han Fei was not surprised. The patterns that could appear on the nautical panorama didn't look like simple patterns at all. Han Fei could afford to repair it with 1 billion points of spiritual energy. Without any hesitation, Han Fei directly repaired it. After a while, information reappeared in his eyes. Tao pattern, unrated, note. Heavenly path pattern contains the mysterious truth of impermanence, and the rules of the great path are hidden in it. Observing the Tao pattern in the market can enhance the power of the soul and improve one's comprehension. As for arrays, the power will be doubled. This Tao pattern contains the principles of the 9 palaces and is often used in arrays. After Han Fei restored all the Tao patterns, as soon as he immersed his mind in them, he found that there were many inexplicable lines in his mind. But these lines were different from those arranged on the ground. If one looked at these lines independently, he would find that once they were reflected in his mind, they would change on their own. The great path is invisible. How can the great path be shown with clear lines? Han Fei suddenly realized something. The Tao pattern in his mind was the real Tao pattern, but once it was drawn, it was no longer a real Tao pattern. In this passage there should be an array. When someone drew the array, they hid the meaning of the Tao pattern in it, so the array was extraordinarily powerful. Han Fei suddenly stood up. Now that he knew what these lines were, the logic of all the problems could be figured out. No matter how strange this passageway was, it was just a formation. Since others could use this Tao pattern to draw a killing array, then he could use this Tao pattern to draw a defensive array. The principle was the same. Currently, the only difference between him and the others was whether or not each of these Tao patterns contained any special meaning within them. For example, he didn't know which lines should be used to set up what array. He spent 1 billion points of spiritual energy to repair this part of the Tao pattern. Also, Han Fei was certain that this part of the Tao pattern was only the tip of the iceberg of the real heavenly way. In such a situation, he only needed to test it out. Currently, there weren't many Tao patterns in his mind. Most of them were curves, hard straight lines, breakpoint lines, and wave segment lines. What Han Fei needed to do now was to create a defensive array or a soul-driving array for himself, one that could resist other people's killing arrays. Han Fei stepped on the ground and drew the coiled turtle array with Tao patterns. He said that he hadn't used much spiritual energy yet, but then he saw the old tortoise lying on the ground, as if it had a solid body. Hiss, Han Fei gasped. Was the coiled turtle array so strong? Han Fei was also a master of arrays. When he created the Avenger, he studied hard and engraved all his ideas on the ship. He knew very well how powerful the coiled turtle array was. However, he just tested it casually and the strength of the coiled turtle array was at least doubled. What kind of concept was this? This meant that his achievements in array techniques could directly increase by several times. Fortunately, old Jiang didn't know that there were Tao patterns in this world. Otherwise, he would have to beg Han Fei for help. Han Fei wouldn't mind spending 10 billion on this thing, let alone 1 billion. Seeing that Han Fei's face was filled with a smile, the old tortoise said, "Have you figured it out again?" Han Fei's lips curled up. "Everything in the world is traceable." The old tortoise really didn't want to see Han Fei's smug face. He said leisurely, "Then what is this?" Han Fei grinned. "You will know when you sign a master-servant contract with me." The old tortoise. Han Fei didn't tell the old tortoise. Although the old tortoise could guess that it had something to do with the demon purification pot, he didn't have any connection with the demon purification pot, so he didn't know anything. Han Fei quickly came back to himself and tested the strength of the coiled turtle array with the infinity water. Because the output of spiritual energy was limited, the coiled turtle array only lasted for a minute or so before it disappeared. Then, Han Fei drew the coiled turtle array with the broken lines, only to find that the coiled turtle array could absorb other people's attack power, and the absorption power was about 10% according to the complexity of the coiled turtle array. Han Fei drew the coiled turtle array with the wave lines again. This time, the array that Han Fei drew had the effect of reflecting power, and the rebound power was also about 10%. Han Fei immediately took a breath. What kind of Tao pattern is this? It's so useful. And this was just a single use of the lines. And the lines in the channel were used together. Obviously, the person who drew the array had mixed the different characteristics of the Tao pattern. Han Fei was not in a hurry, as if he had discovered a new continent. In any case, he made the right decision to come to this secret realm this time. Apart from everything else, just the fact that he had comprehended the Tao pattern was already a big win for him. Of course, the premise was that he had to go there himself. In Forge the Universe. 3 days later, Han Fei fused 4 different kinds of Tao patterns into the lines of the array and created the coiled turtle array. Its defense power was increased by 50%, the absorption power was increased by 6%, and the rebound power was increased by 5%. There was no specific feedback on the toughness and expansion, but it was still about 10% stronger than before. Based on the current array, Han Fei felt that he could set up a large array to defend against a peak-level venerable. However, that was only relative, and it depended on the opponent's Tao. 7 days later, Han Fei slowly drew another large defensive array in addition to the coiled turtle array. So far, the coiled turtle array that Han Fei had drawn with 12 kinds of lines had increased its defense power by 80%, the absorption power by 10%, the rebound power by 8%, and the toughness and expansion had been about doubled. This meant that the array that Han Fei had created now was twice as strong as before. With his current strength as a peak-level junior venerable, he could easily create an array that could block the power of an advanced venerable. The other was the 8-line life-locking array that Han Fei created. This array was much more complicated than the coiled turtle array. Han Fei hadn't used it before because he didn't mainly use it for defense, but to save his life. This array had the function of both a defensive array and a soul control array. It could lock vitality and forcibly sacrifice physical strength at the last moment to preserve the soul and vitality. Under normal circumstances, Han Fei wouldn't use it. Out of Forge the Universe, Han Fei tilted his head and looked at the array again. In Forge the Universe, he tried to outline this kind of array. As a result, a large number of silk threads appeared. These silk threads contained Tao, which were stronger than ordinary Tao and could easily break tendons and stones. But the stronger effect of this kind of thought was to cut the soul. According to the corpses of the strong masters who died in the passage, most of the people he knew were just corpses and not exposed. But according to their faces, they should also be venerable explorers. If they reached the king level, there would be corresponding pressure. Knowing the limit of this passage, Han Fei was naturally not afraid of this array. Holding a fish skin map in each hand, Han Fei stepped into this passage. Sizzle, swish, 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 endless silk threads suddenly emerged, and Han Fei seemed to be in a cocoon full of silk threads. He had to walk out of this passage step by step against the countless terrifying silk thread. If he were an ordinary human, his soul would be directly crushed. With a clatter, the 2 fish skin maps in Han Fei's hands unfolded. Han Fei's body was directly enveloped by 2 layers of blue halos. This was the soul-driving array, but different from the soul-driving arrays that Han Fei had used before. This one had transparent, gelatinous, invisible power. When those invisible silk threads cut Han Fei's soul-driving array, the power of the silk threads and the power of the soul-driving array cancelled each other out. And in this state, Han Fei slowly moved forward. What Han Fei consumed was his spiritual power. Although it had become several times stronger, it still consumed a lot of spiritual power under this crazy cutting. Fortunately, this road was not long, only more than 2,000 meters. The enemy didn't seem to want to kill everyone at once. After discovering this situation, Han Fei's face was slightly pale. He split out wisps of his soul and used his soul as a guide to slowly lead the ownerless souls to follow him. Seeing this, the old turtle felt as if there were 10,000 iron-head fish galloping in his heart. Is this a person with great luck? Han Fei's soul was obviously damaged. Now so many ownerless souls were sent to him, which was like sending him to the top of the world. In fact, Han Fei was also overjoyed. This was a complete surprise. Sure enough, in this world, while there were dangers, there were also unparalleled opportunities. It was a pity that these people, each of whom should be very strong, died here. While moving forward, Han Fei threw the bones of these people into Forge the Universe. Han Fei said, "Now that I have your ownerless souls, I will be a good person to the end. When I go out, you will be at peace." Suddenly, when Han Fei was examining the corpses, he saw someone holding a broken token in his hand. What was written on the token had been eroded by time, but on the back of the token, facing the palm of the corpse, there were a few small words left, which said, Jiugong Wanxiang City. Third update. Asking for votes. Just written. Now I will continue to lay out some foreshadowing, but not the whole process. End of this chapter. Chapter 1518. 9 Palace Wanxiang City? Han Fei picked up the token. In the end, he only looked at it for a few seconds before he heard a cracking sound. The token shattered into pieces and disappeared into his palm. Obviously, it had been too long, and the token had decayed in the erosion of time. In fact, not only the token, but very few of these corpses carried weapons or treasures. Maybe they had already been consumed when they passed through this passage. After all, these people died in different places in the passage. Those who went far were either extremely powerful or had brought in a lot of reserve. All Han Fei could find on these corpses were battlesuit. Among them, the best battlesuit had reached the ultra-quality level. However, the battlesuit was fine, but the bodies of these people seemed to be eroded by the surrounding energy, as if their power was absorbed by something. Obviously, the Taoist pattern array in the passage could attack the soul, so no matter how good the battlesuit was, it would be useless. Han Fei even suspected that these Taoist patterns had the effect of corroding the corpses. Han Fei put away this ultra-quality battlesuit. With a slight shake, the dust dispersed, and the battlesuit was as good as new. After staying in the passage for about half an hour, when a huge number of ownerless souls chased after him and flew out, Han Fei stepped out of this passage. Huff! As soon as he came out of the passage, the array around Han Fei collapsed. Maintaining this kind of soul formation required not only spiritual qi, but also one's own powerful soul strength as support. Han Fei took a few breaths. Although he felt mentally exhausted, he still looked at the place outside the passage immediately. Looking up, Han Fei saw a big ball, which looked a bit like a globe and a bit like a roulette wheel. When the two were combined, it was basically a ball roulette. Damn it. Han Fei knew that this secret realm had not reached the end yet. After all, he didn't come in very deep. He had only passed 2 levels, and the diameter was only 6,000 meters. Han Fei didn't immediately study what the big ball was, but sat cross-legged and quickly began to refine the ownerless souls. In any case, improving his strength was the most important thing. Since he was able to reach this step, he naturally obtained a certain amount of opportunities. Although these opportunities were left behind by countless adventurers at the cost of their lives. It took Han Fei 6 hours to stabilize his body. 3 hours later, Han Fei glanced at his information again. Owner Han Fei level 83, Junior Venerable, Chaotic Energy, 9 Whisk Spirit, 76623/79999, Damaged Perception, 24,000 km power, 3,782 waves, First Spiritual Pulse, unknown a Second Spiritual Vein, unknown First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, level 73, Second Spiritual Beast, King Sparrow, level 21, Main Art, Void Fishing, level 6, Sky Stealing Art, Venerable level, Divine Quality. When he saw this information, the corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly. I knew that these ownerless souls were still not good enough. Han Fei sighed slightly. In fact, this was completely a fortuitous encounter. He had never thought that he would obtain so many ownerless souls. He killed 4 sea demons and sucked part of Chao Xian's ownerless souls, but he had less than 6,000 points in total. But this time, he had gained nearly 12,000 points, which was already a lot. Even if each venerable could only provide him with 1,000 points of soul power, it would be equivalent to him killing 12 venerables this time. What did that mean? And now, Han Fei's soul power had reached the strongest level in history. After all, in order to strengthen the foundation of the Explorer realm, Han Fei had sacrificed a lot of soul power. Compared with the more than 50,000 points of soul power before, Han Fei felt that his mental state was excellent. If he used the 100-beast soul devourer now, it would be far more powerful than before. After all, his overall strength had been greatly improved. The path of cultivation had always been one where there were many joys and many sorrows. Han Fei looked back at the channel. How many ownerless souls had been accumulated here for tens of thousands of years? Although many had dissipated, it was enough to prove how difficult it was to cultivate the soul. Now, although his top priority was to repair his damaged spiritual power, this was only the first step. He still needed to use a large number of ownerless souls to temper the indestructible soul. It couldn't be helped. If he wanted to cultivate the invincible tyrant body, he would constantly consume the power of his divine soul. This technique was what really bothered Han Fei. In order to cultivate the indestructible body, he had suffered a lot. Now, in order to cultivate the indestructible tyrant body, his soul power would always be in a state of damage. Getting rid of his messy thoughts, Han Fei got up and walked to the big ball. What if there were other ownerless souls here? If there was one, there would be 2. In the second level, it provided him with so many ownerless souls. Would there be more ownerless souls in the depths of this secret realm? When Han Fei walked into the blue ball, he suddenly looked at the ground under his feet. At this time, some words appeared on the projection of the ball on the ground. These words said, "Everything in the 9 palaces has its own destiny, and all the mysteries of heaven are calculated with a ruler." Han Fei was speechless. What a boast! These words were very straightforward. It meant that someone could calculate all the mysteries of heaven with a ruler? Could the mysteries of heaven be calculated? Was it bragging? In addition to this sentence, there were some small explanatory words in the projection. It said, "Being able to come here means that you have extraordinary strength and a strong soul. However, all living things in the world have their own destiny. Only after passing the destiny challenge can you see your true strength. Come on, stop and put your hand on the destiny ball." Destiny challenge? Han Fei looked at this sentence and was quite puzzled. He looked back at the passage again and thought to himself, is there really no one who can pass through? That passage had already told him that there were many people who had come to this place. However, most of them had died in it. Basically, they were all human beings. Han Fei suspected that many of them should be the venerables of the Yin-Yang heaven. Otherwise, why were there so few venerables of the Yin-Yang heaven? It couldn't be that all the venerables were born in aristocratic families, right? So many people died in the passage. In that case, did anyone die from this luck ball? The old turtle said leisurely, the luck checkpoint, interesting. This empress thinks that this empress should know who created this mystic realm. Han Fei asked, who? The old turtle told Han Fei casually, just now, when I saw the 9-palace Wanxiang city, I thought it was a coincidence. But now seeing this, I'm almost sure that this is the Tao of divination. Han Fei asked, the Tao of divination? The old turtle said, you should know that the strong more or less have the ability to calculate the mysteries of heaven, right? In the age of gods, all methods could be used to communicate with the gods, so there was the Tao of divination. Some people seek good fortune and avoid disaster by calculating the mysteries of heaven, and even change their own luck. They are proficient in the laws of divination and the operation of things. Among them, there are several major factions. Some people think that the way of arrays is to follow the natural divination of heaven and earth, so they take the path of arrays. Some people think that the Tao of divination is related to the truth of the world, and what they pursue is to calculate the heavens with numbers. What's more, they connect numbers with the number of destiny. Han Fei was surprised. The more he listened, the more it sounded like the Tao of divination. Han Fei couldn't help asking, and then? The old turtle said leisurely, I don't know much. I only heard that this kind of people are very rare, because ordinary people don't have the brains to study this path at all. I've met one, but my era was so chaotic. That person might not be good enough to calculate his own life and death, so he was hacked to death. Han Fei rolled his eyes. You're making me speechless. Just tell me that this is a game played by people with high IQs. Han Fei felt that this challenge shouldn't be too difficult for him. Logically speaking, his luck might be the strongest in the entire Yin-Yang heaven. If he couldn't pass this challenge with his luck, then he really couldn't think of anyone else in the Yin-Yang heaven who could pass this challenge. However, just in case, Han Fei threw a wisp of essence blood on the ground not far away. Then, he summoned Little Fatty and tossed it to a corner. Han Fei felt that if something really happened to him, even if the blood drop rebirth didn't work, Little Fatty had a way to resurrect him. Han Fei stretched out his hand and placed his palm on the ball of destiny. At that moment, the ball began to spin rapidly. At the moment the ball spun, Han Fei saw various numbers and some strange symbols similar to formulas in his previous life appearing on the ball. The old turtle said, Look, I was right, wasn't I? If this empress is not wrong, these numbers represent your destiny and destiny. It's normal for these people to try to calculate one's destiny. Crack, 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 the crazily spinning ball slowly came to a stop. In the end, Han Fei was left with a string of numbers. However, this string of numbers was a lie. It was written as 123. 789. Han Fei's eyes widened. That's it. The numbers quickly condensed into words, and the words were unsolvable. Heh. That's it? Han Fei was speechless. Old Yuan, are you kidding me? Is this the result of my destiny? No solution? Isn't that obvious? Who has a solution for the future? Bullsh *T. Crack, crack, cracks. Just when Han Fei was about to look for another way, he saw that the surface of the ball suddenly broke into countless cubes. As the cubes collapsed, Han Fei saw that the surrounding scenery began to change in an orderly manner. What appeared in front of Han Fei was a fairyland that looked like a green prairie. Old Yuan, do you see this? I'm not hallucinating, am I? Han Fei saw that there were mountains, rivers, and lakes here. The spiritual energy here was dozens of times denser than that of the outside world, and the energy was very abundant. In front of Han Fei, there was a stone platform that looked like a small altar. There was a column of light on the stone platform, and in the light column floated a 1-foot-long ruler. In Han Fei's eyes information appeared. Name 9 Palace Ruler of Destiny Introduction, a treasure of destiny forged by the bamboo of destiny, a natural spiritual treasure. The 9 Palace Ruler of Destiny contains the changes of the 9 palaces. It can help others avoid misfortune, fluctuate one's own destiny, and forcibly change one's destiny. It can only be used once a day, or you will suffer a backlash. Quality Human Holy Artifact, Effect Detect good or bad fortune, change one's destiny unrecastable, unrefined, remarks the destiny of destiny can only be changed indirectly, not by force. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 15-19. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. Another human holy artifact? Was this kind of powerful magic weapon everywhere now? Besides, this was not an ordinary treasure. This thing could actually change one's luck? Han Fei couldn't help but think of the sentence he had just seen. Everything in the 9 palaces has its own luck. Was it because of this 9 Palace Ruler of Destiny? Was it because of Han Fei's amazing luck? Inexplicably, he encountered this ruler. Now, Han Fei was sure that so far, he was the first person to get this final treasure. Han Fei was puzzled. Did everyone else die in the channel of the 2nd level? Then on second thought, Han Fei thought, the 3rd level, the sphere, doesn't seem to be a level. Or could it be said that his luck was good and he just happened to win the roulette? Han Fei didn't care so much. He reached out and grabbed the 9 Palace Ruler of Destiny. After getting this kind of human sacred weapon, the first thing he did was to refine the treasure. 2 hours later, when the 9 Palace Fate Ruler appeared in front of Han Fei immediately understood what was going on. This ruler could measure people's luck. If he got a wisp of other people's soul or essence blood, he could also help others change their luck. Of course, it could also help him change his luck. However, to help him change his luck, it actually consumed chaotic chi. The only benefit of free use was that it could help him improve his luck every day when he didn't use it. As long as he carried this ruler, his luck would be enhanced. There were 9 squares on the ruler. Each square corresponded to a different luck. Among them, there were ominous, auspicious, great auspicious, impermanent, even, and desperate. Among them, the ominous and auspicious palaces were both even. In other words, there were 2 ominous and 2 auspicious palaces in these 9 squares. This ruler looked ordinary, more like a tool used by fortune-tellers to trick people. Han Fei decided to test today's luck first. The 9 Palace Ruler of Destiny rose 10 meters into the air. In the void, a tangible scale appeared and circulated in the 9 palaces. As soon as the beam of light was retracted, Han Fei saw a red void scale fall in the palace of Great Ominous Beast. Han Fei. At the moment when Han Fei used the 9 Palace Ruler of Providence, in a square palace that was surrounded by dense arrays, someone suddenly opened his eyes. The man's face lit up. 9 Palaces Fate Ruler? It's still in this world? The man stretched out his hand and a ball appeared in his hand. The ball spun rapidly, spinning 108,000 times, and in the end, the word unsolvable appeared. The man exclaimed in surprise, no solution? The 9 Palaces Destiny Ruler was in a place where destiny was sealed? No. Destiny cannot be sealed. It has yet to be born. Looks like I'll have to wait for a while. Han Fei was dumbfounded. The old turtle naturally saw this and couldn't help but comment, "This treasure is quite interesting." Even this emperor didn't sense any signs of great danger, but it actually directly sensed it? Han Fei immediately put away the 9 Palace Ruler of Providence and scanned with his senses. This entire space should be an independent small world with a radius of no more than 50 kilometers. Although it was not as beautiful as the singing of birds and the fragrance of flowers, it was at least beautiful, like a paradise on earth. How can there be great danger? The old turtle said, "There are absolutely no powerful creatures here. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to escape my senses. I can only say that the great danger predicted by this ruler is not here. After only a few minutes, Han Fei found a teleportation array somewhere in this space. It turned out to be a teleportation array drawn by Taoist patterns. In any case, this was a teleportation array. Although it was beautiful here, it was not a place to stay for a long time. Han Fei was lucky enough to get the 9-palace ruler of Providence, but it predicted a great danger for him on the spot. Who could resist it? Han Fei walked into this teleportation array without hesitation. With a swish, he appeared in an extremely neatly arranged green brick courtyard. Rather than calling this a courtyard, it was more like calling it a strange little park. The only building here was a small pavilion. The style of the courtyard was square. It seemed that the person who built this place liked rectangular lines very much. He couldn't perceive it here. Han Fei's senses were blocked by an invisible barrier. It seemed that the owner of this place was very good at arrays. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly. Every grass, every tree, every brick, and every scenery here were arrays. However, this array didn't seem to be activated, so Han Fei walked straight to the pavilion on this green brick path. When Han Fei arrived at the small pavilion, he saw a young man in a green robe sitting upright in the center of the pavilion, in front of a stone table. On the stone table, there were a few fish skin drawings, but this didn't attract Han Fei's attention. What made Han Fei stare at him intently was that there was a sword stuck in the young man's chest. To be precise, it couldn't even be regarded as a sword, but a stream of sword chi. However, after a long time, the sword chi didn't dissipate and was still in the shape of a sword. Han Fei was amazed. What kind of shape is this? It's just a stream of sword chi. Can't it dissipate? Han Fei walked up and shouted, "Brother, are you still alive?" The old turtle said helplessly, "How can I still be alive? My vitality is gone. Except for the body that doesn't decay, my soul has long been destroyed. I can't be more dead." Han Fei wondered. There are always some people who are as good as alive when they are dead. At first glance, I can tell that this person has extraordinary strength and has reached the realm of immortality. I think his physique can't be bad. Han Fei walked up and glanced at the fish skin book on the stone table, which read, "My name is Yi Nan, from the 9-palace heaven. I fought with 8th sword of the sword god palace in the Yin-Yang heaven. Both of us were seriously injured and exhausted, but we barely lived for a few more months. I am about to die and feel far away from home. I hope that the talented people of the future generations can inherit my 9-palace ruler of destiny and inherit my Tao." There were only a few words written on this fish skin map. Then, Han Fei opened another fish skin map, on which was a brief introduction of the record of myriad Tao patterns. There are Tao patterns in heaven and earth, and they are infinite. Grasp the Tao patterns and obtain destiny. When destiny enters the array is unparalleled. Look at the 36 immortal palaces and ask the heavenly Tao directly. Only the 9 palaces. The rest are mediocre. When he saw this text, Han Fei smiled. Sure enough, everyone in the immortal palace thinks that their immortal palace is the strongest and they can ask the strongest Tao directly. This 9-palace heaven must be an immortal palace that shocked the world with its arithmetic. Han Fei had to admit that in terms of arrays, these people were indeed unparalleled and terrifying. However, who was stronger and who was weaker? Han Fei didn't quite believe it. If he was really so strong, why was he nailed to death by a sword? Of course, this didn't prevent Han Fei from looking at other people's great technique. Han Fei immediately grabbed the jade slip under the fish skin map and scanned it with his perception. Information popped up in his mind. Record of myriad Tao patterns, venerable level, high quality, introduction. Compile the heavenly Tao patterns into a book, dismantle their usage, study their natural operation, and figure out the usage of tens of thousands of heavenly Tao patterns. This is an amazing book on arrays. The Tao patterns themselves are meaningless, but once they enter the array, they will be unpredictable. Deduced art. Unknown deduction consumption. 10 wisps of chaotic chi note. The heavenly Tao patterns are uncountable, and the myriad Tao patterns may be one wisp. Sure enough, as Han Fei expected, this was a summary book of Tao patterns. The Tao pattern picture that he had deduced before was only a part of this record of myriad Tao patterns. Perhaps it seemed that his deduction just now was wrong. However, if he hadn't deduced it, he might not have been able to enter this place at all. Therefore, there were gains and losses. In the end, he made a profit. Han Fei skimmed through the record of myriad Tao patterns and found that the array composition in it was much more varied than what he had studied before. If the spirit-gathering scripture was the enlightenment of arrays for Han Fei, then the ocean book taught Han Fei a lot of arrays and let him know the myriad arrays in the human world. Old Han, on the other hand, guided Han Fei on the right path of creating arrays. And this record of myriad Tao patterns could enable Han Fei to embark on the path of arrays. Han Fei believed that even if he didn't have the indestructible body, with this record of myriad Tao patterns, he could become the most powerful person in the venerable realm. However, Han Fei didn't intend to stay here for long. Outside the small pavilion was a teleportation array. In this teleportation array there was a symbol of water. If there was no accident, this was the way to leave. Just as Han Fei was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something and stopped. The people of the Nine Palace Heaven were very good at setting up arrays, so this secret realm could be said to be quite safe. Since it was so safe, the place where the Nine Palace Destiny Ruler was stored just now shouldn't be wasted, right? When he came back from the Waterwood Heaven, he wanted to store the seed of the Water Immortal in the Immortal Palace. In that way, the Water Immortal would definitely grow extremely fast. However, the current appearance of the Yin-Yang Palace was obviously not suitable for the Water Immortal to live there. But this place was suitable. Here, there was energy, spiritual chi, and the environment. It probably wouldn't be a short time for the Water Immortal's seed to grow again. Why not leave it here for a while? Immediately, Han Fei was almost impressed by his own wit. With a turn, Han Fei returned to the beautiful place from the teleportation array. With a thought from Han Fei, he placed the Tao seed of the Water Immortal in the place where the Nine Palace Destiny Ruler had been. As soon as this Tao seed was released, the surrounding spiritual energy and energy began to slowly flow in. Han Fei observed for a while and saw that this Tao seed didn't move, so he set up hundreds of arrays around it. And they were all arranged with Tao patterns to prevent the Water Immortal from regenerating and then running away. After doing all this, Han Fei said with satisfaction, "Master, you can stay here for a while. When I'm done, I'll come back to see you." Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 15-20. Maybe it was really because he was too lucky. Originally, he just came to try his luck in a secret realm, but it turned out that it helped him uncover a lot of secrets. Not only did he get a human holy weapon, but he also learned Taoist patterns, which greatly improved his array skills. Besides, from Yi Nan's description, Han Fei was almost sure of another thing, that was, in the depths of this abyssal chasm, there should be a place where a strong master died. That should be the depths of the sword tide. He couldn't break through it before precisely because the power of the sword tide was too strong, beyond his limit. But now, Han Fei took back Little Fatty and left the secret realm. In the blink of an eye, he swam 1,000 kilometers away, walking in the endless sword tide. Looking at the countless white lights surging towards him, Han Fei didn't even bother to block them. After a while, he came to the secret realm left by Ren Tianfei. Now looking at it, Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. At that time, he was really stupid and naive, thinking that he was the only one who could come here. In fact, Han Fei felt that maybe this place was temporarily set up by that old guy after he came to the abyssal chasm. But no matter what, Han Fei continued to walk to the depths of the abyssal chasm. When the abyssal chasm was more than 8,000 kilometers away, the power of the sword chi here could easily tear a law enforcer to pieces. And this road was still nearly 1,000 kilometers away. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, can the peak-level blow of a venerable split a crack as long as 10,000 kilometers with one sword strike?" The old turtle naturally knew what Han Fei was asking. He said, "Generally speaking, it's unlikely. But if you reach the half-king realm and make a life-risking blow with all your strength, it's possible. For example, your strongest attack can reach 1,000 miles away, right?" Han Fei thought to himself, "More than that? If I attack with all my strength, regardless of the consequences, my sacrificing punch can at least blast 3,000 kilometers away. But that's me." Han Fei didn't dare to say that he was the strongest heavenly talent in the world heaven, but at least in the Yin-Yang heaven, there shouldn't be anyone stronger than him in the same realm. The difference between 3,000 kilometers and 10,000 kilometers was still very big. At the beginning, Han Fei knew that this abyssal chasm was probably created by a sword strike. Now it seemed that Yi Nan from the Nine Palace Heaven was obviously not a king. Since he was not a king, then this eighth sword and Yi Nan were equally matched. He shouldn't be a king either. However, a half-monarch realm cultivator had managed to create such a large abyssal crack with one sword strike. This was inconceivable. To be precise, this abyssal chasm was less than 9,200 kilometers wide. Han Fei swam forward for more than 1,000 kilometers and found a person standing at the end of the abyssal chasm. This person was like a statue, holding a sword with both hands, standing upright on the seabed in front of him. The surroundings were densely packed with sword chi. When Han Fei arrived, the sword chi was like a purgatory of blades, wrapping him in it and trying to kill him. However, the power of the sword chi could only tear apart a mid-level explorer at most. No matter how strong they were, they wouldn't be able to kill them. Logically speaking, this strength wasn't very high. There were definitely many people who could reach this step. However, in front of the figure there were broken bones everywhere. It was obvious that many experts had fallen before this person. Han Fei was surprised. This man is already dead. Can he still slaughter so many people? At least, Han Fei felt that he was not threatened at all. However, in order to verify the power left by this person, Han Fei casually performed the draw technique. His strength had reached the peak of the venerable realm. Clang! When Han Fei slashed out, Han Fei suddenly discovered that all the sword chi around him disappeared without a trace. And in front of the figure, a sword shadow pierced out and blocked the draw technique. With a crisp collision sound, the surrounding air billowed, and the sword intent and the knife intent almost swept the entire abyssal chasm. At this time, Han Fei was also surprised to find that the figure standing on the seabed twisted a few times and then returned to normal. Han Fei said in surprise, "That's not a human being." The old turtle said, "It's a sword. That man died a long time ago, but he managed to cultivate his divine soul into a sword intent that will forever stand tall in the deep sea." "Oh, a sword man?" Han Fei was speechless. Is there something wrong with this person's head? Has he gone crazy from practicing swordsmanship? Has he turned himself into a sword man? The old turtle said, "You don't understand. He is leaving an inheritance for himself, just like the person who walked the Tao of divination just now. Look, this person has turned into a sword, and even after his death, he can still take a knife from you. This means that he has cultivated the entire abyssal chasm into his sword domain with his own strength. As long as this place doesn't collapse, the sword chi will not stop." While the old turtle was explaining, Han Fei had already walked forward with a kitchen knife in his hand. As soon as he walked to 100 meters in front of the sword man, all the sword chi gathered. The power of these sword chi was not very strong, not strong enough to kill Han Fei. In fact, it was extremely difficult to even kill a half-venerable realm expert. However, the attack method of these sword chi was very interesting. This sword man didn't seem to care how many people he passed on his swordsmanship. Anyway, what Han Fei saw were all kinds of fancy swordsmanship. In the Thousand-Star City, there was a very special venerable, that was the Heavenly Sword Master. This old man was only an advanced venerable, but he could challenge a peak-level venerable and not be defeated. Even the fierceness of his swordsmanship could shake a semi-king powerhouse. This was a sword cultivator. The sword was the leader of all weapons and the sharpest weapon. The motto of the Heavenly Sword sect was that before you found your own sword, you could learn anything. Once you entered the real path of swordsmanship, you would give up all other weapons and combat skills and focus on swordsmanship. The sword man in front of Han Fei should be a master of swordsmanship. Although he was not a king, his swordsmanship was so exquisite that even Han Fei was amazed. In front of Han Fei's eyes, there seemed to be 100,000 sword chi, each of which was like a sword move. Although Han Fei knew that there weren't so many, it looked so scary. The old turtle said, "I have to remind you not to underestimate sword cultivators. Just now, that arithmetic guy was not weak, was he? He even had a rare treasure in his hand, but he was still stabbed to death. This abyssal chasm is tens of thousands of kilometers long, but it was created by this little guy who is at most a semi-king. I can only say that the combat power of sword cultivators is extremely terrifying." Han Fei carried his knife and walked to within 100 meters of the sword man. Swish! At the moment when Han Fei entered, all the sword chi seemed to have a target. One of the wisps arrived in an instant. It was as fast as lightning. After one sword strike, Han Fei felt that there were 100 sword strikes in a row. Clank, clank, clank. Han Fei only had time to block the first 8 swords, and then he was cut by the other party's 100 sword chi. However, these sword chi didn't hurt Han Fei. However, this had also proved that Han Fei's counterattack speed was too slow. Han Fei himself felt a little ridiculous. His speed could already be considered terrifying. This thing had been dead for a long time, but it was still faster than him? It must be because the way he opened it was not right. Han Fei retreated, shouted, "Fuse," and then re-entered. Swish! 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 Clank, clank, clank. Han Fei's body was like a phantom, and the knife in his hand had disappeared. He clashed 63 times in a row. The countless sword chi fell on Han Fei again. Wow! So fast! The old turtle said leisurely, "Of course. Sword cultivators are a very special type of cultivators. It is said that every sword cultivator, even if they take different paths, has different obsessions in their hearts. Therefore, their daos are different. Therefore, among sword cultivators, there is no such thing as the strong devouring the weak." Han Fei asked, "Don't sword cultivators harvest leeks?" The old turtle said, "No, only those who have the same daos will kill each other." Then the old turtle said, "Do you know why you are slower than him?" Han Fei asked, "Why?" Han Fei felt that he was fast enough, but the other party was faster. Even if his soul could keep up with the direction of the sword chi, his body couldn't. The old turtle said, "Taoist heart. Those who use swords have a firm Taoist heart and must have a guard in their heart. In the Age of Gods, there is a saying that if you don't know which path to take, it is definitely the right choice to enter the path of sword cultivators." Han Fei's lips twitched. "Is it really as incredible as you say? I have always used knives. Is a knife worse than a sword?" The old turtle said, "The knife is fierce, but the knife is wild. The sword is fierce, but the sword is strange and has bones. It's not that you can't use knives, but there are few famous people who use knives. But there are countless extraordinary people who use swords." Han Fei moved forward again, only to see a sword like a flash of light. As soon as Han Fei drew the knife, the sword had already appeared behind him, close to his arm, and came at him. Gulp! So fast! This time, Han Fei couldn't help but stare at it. Maybe The yin-yang heaven had its own characteristics, for example, the great Tao of yin and yang, and he controlled the supreme yin-yang wheel. However, his understanding of the great Tao of yin and yang was basically unknown. After all, he hadn't even gotten the immortal palaces yet. But today, Han Fei found something special about the other 2 of the 36 immortal palaces he met. It seemed that each of the 36 immortal palaces had a special ability. The 9-palace heaven was good at divination, changing luck, and calculating the mysteries of heaven. The people of the Sword God Palace fought too fiercely. If the other party had the same realm, strength, and physique as him, he would probably have been killed by them. These were just 2 palaces. Besides, these 2 palaces didn't seem to be among the palaces I mentioned. Maybe their status was even lower than that of the Yin-Yang Palace. However, their strength was so strong. How could Han Fei not be shocked? She was counting on him to unify the 36 immortal palaces. But what happened? This was nothing. These 2 people who had fallen for God knows how many tens of thousands of years had almost taken care of him? In the field of sword chi, Han Fei's yin-yang divine eyes flickered. Since sword cultivators are so powerful, it's not difficult for me to learn one more sword technique. Chapter 15:21. For Han Fei, since someone else's technique was more powerful than his, he certainly had to learn it. When he surpassed him, he would naturally be stronger than him. Anyway, with the demon purification pot, Han Fei was best at learning. Besides, he could master more than one Tao and switch them at will. This was also his confidence. It only took Han Fei an hour to memorize these sword techniques. Of course, he did learn them. Among them, there were some that he could understand and some that he couldn't. Gradually, Han Fei saw the shadow of the heavenly sword master in these sword techniques. After all, Han Fei had seen the master of the heavenly sword attack. Today, from the sword techniques of the Sword God Palace, Han Fei saw a sword attack that the master of the heavenly sword once used. That was when he killed the second ancestor of the Zhang family with the sky-dissecting finger. Old Monster Chu attacked, and the master of the heavenly sword pierced the imprisoned void with a small red sword. At that time, the sword looked simple and unadorned, but it was shockingly powerful. And at this moment, Han Fei encountered it. Among the tens of thousands of sword moves, Han Fei could only block half of them. Han Fei was still trying to memorize the other half. When Han Fei was 10 meters away from the swordsman, the sword moves became even more gorgeous and intended to hit his soul. The sword moves were traceless, and his eyes were filled with light and shadow. Gemini Divine Technique. Han Fei decided that he would spend the next few days here. If he couldn't even understand the sword techniques of the Sword God Palace, could he still be called truly invincible? Han Fei's pride wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. The body of the black fog was far away at this moment, because no sword chi could detect it. Therefore, he could observe and memorize every sword technique that he couldn't block without scruples. It was a miracle. There were thousands of sword chi around, but none of them attacked the black fog. It could be seen that the closer he was, the clearer the target of the boundless sword chi was. 2 hours. 2 hours. By the 6th hour, countless images of sword techniques had appeared in Han Fei's mind. Unknowingly, the body of the white fog had arrived 2 meters away from the swordsman. He stared at the sword in the swordsman's hand and asked, "Old Yuan, is this sword real?" "Old Turtle, fake, it's all fake." Ever since this person transformed into a sword, he was a sword, and the sword was him. He didn't even use a sword. Han Fei curled his lips. It's a pity that this man didn't even leave a sword behind except for his powerful swordsmanship. After all, Yi Nan of the 9 Palace Heavens had left behind a worldly sacred weapon. You came to my yin-yang heaven and didn't even leave behind any treasures. Just when Han Fei was about to continue observing the sword moves, he suddenly saw that the standing swordsman suddenly opened his eyes. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if the swordsman had come back to life. The swordsman suddenly opened his eyes, but his face was expressionless, and the long sword in his hand suddenly stabbed at Han Fei. But Han Fei's speed couldn't be described as slow. He stepped on a coiled turtle array, which was also made of Taoist patterns. Even if the swordsman was still alive, he wouldn't be able to break it instantly. As for himself, he only needed a split second to retreat from this place. However, Han Fei was shocked to find that the sword ignored the coiled turtle array and directly stabbed him. Bam! At this moment, Han Fei saw his body of white fog from a third-party perspective. The body of white fog, which was like his own body, was flying back at an extremely slow speed. Damn it! Han Fei suddenly came back to himself and activated the soul-driving array. Clang! At the moment the soul-driving array appeared, a white shadow stabbed at him. Han Fei clearly felt that he was now in a soul body, and the swordsman stabbed his soul out with the sword. If his soul left his body in the abyssal chasm that was full of sword chi, it was likely to be shattered by the countless sword techniques that could attack the soul. Even if it couldn't be shattered, he would definitely be injured. This was the experience of half of Han Fei's soul, and the other half was still in the body of the black fog. However, all this happened so fast that Han Fei didn't even have time to think. It was as if he suddenly saw his own body from a third-party perspective. Before he had time to think about what was going on, the opponent's soul-killing technique had already arrived. Puff! In an instant, Han Fei saw a small sword piercing into his soul body. Crack! Crack! The moment the small sword entered his soul body, it quickly began to split. And at this time, Han Fei realized that this bastard swordsman was really not dead. He even wanted to possess me? At this moment, the first thought that came to Han Fei's mind was to merge the two into one and restore himself to his peak state. However, this thought only existed for a moment and was rejected by Han Fei. The body of black fog was still there. Even if something went wrong with the body of white fog, so what? On the contrary, if he merged the two into one at this time, there might be a problem. Oh! The body of black fog launched an attack, and the 100 Beasts soul-devouring technique rushed out. This voice naturally had no effect on his divine soul. However, when the 100 Beasts soul-devouring technique only slightly shocked the endless sword soul for a moment, it was shattered by the sword soul. At this time, Han Fei had no time to complain about the old turtle. He was ready to blow up the body of white fog. Although this would cause damage to himself, Han Fei didn't believe that a mere wisp of soul could survive his self-explosion. But just at this moment, suddenly, a small branch poked out of the void and reached directly into Han Fei's soul. The small branch curled up, and the sword soul that had almost occupied half of Han Fei's soul returned to its position and was directly buckled by the small branch. At this moment, Han Fei saw that all the sword chi in the entire abyssal chasm was returning. Hundreds of millions of sword chi were returning, part of which returned to the body of the swordsman, and part of which returned to the sword soul. Phew! At this moment, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. The demon purification pot took action. What was there to be afraid of? After all, self-explosion was also a serious act of self-damage. With the demon purification pot taking action, all the problems would be easily solved. At this moment, Han Fei was like a vortex, and hundreds of millions of sword chi phantoms were frantically gathering in his soul. Han Fei suddenly thought of the 9-palace ruler of destiny. He had just read his fortune today, and it said that he was very unlucky. Damn it, isn't this a great omen? His soul was almost blown out of his body. He almost lost at least 200 years of vitality. Last time, when he self-exploded in the Chu sect, it was like this. Although he escaped, he lost 200 years of vitality. Moreover, his strength had also weakened during that period of time. However, on second thought, how on earth was this 9-palace ruler of destiny made? Even this could be counted? He didn't know if it had counted that this swordsman was still alive. Until this moment, The old turtle's voice sounded. Are you okay? I was deceived by this guy. He refined himself into a sword soul and completely scattered the sword soul in this abyss, waiting for the right person to appear and then regather the sword soul. This person is really insidious. Han Fei didn't want to listen to the old turtle's explanation at this time. He said coldly, "Humph, he has been dead for tens of thousands of years. How dare he try to possess me? He deserves to die." After a while, the little sword hummed incessantly. Han Fei frantically transmitted his thoughts to the demon purification pot. Crush this sword. Crush him. However, the demon purification pot didn't do so. It just grabbed the sword soul. Seeing that there was no movement, Han Fei immediately took out his blood-drinking knife. Soul attachment. This time, the demon purification pot agreed and collected the blood-drinking knife and the sword soul together. The spiritual energy and demonic qi in Forge the Universe were consumed rapidly. Han Fei sneered. Don't you specialize in swordsmanship? I will seal you in my saber and disgust you to death. After more than 200 breaths, the brand new blood-imbibing saber finally appeared. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name blood-drinking sword, mutated. Introduction: it's made of mystic yellow-green iron, blue dragon venomous fangs, grand green essence, wind essence, star clam shell. Supplemented by the soul of the sword puppet, it can break divine gold and rare iron. Quality: ultra-quality divine weapon, soul attachment, soul of the sword puppet effect, armor penetration, soul piercing, recastable, unrefined. Remark: the knife is like a sword. When it's unsheathed, there will be a sword shadow piercing the soul. Pooh! Han Fei was speechless. The blood-drinking knife still looked like a kitchen knife, but its name had become the blood-drinking sword, and it was a mutated blood-drinking sword. Its quality had also become an ultra-quality divine weapon, and it was almost a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Han Fei felt that if it were made of better materials, it might be a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, why did the knife turn into a sword after the sword soul was injected into it? Was this the obsession of the sword soul? Also, in the eyes of the demon purification pot, this was not a sword soul, but the soul of the sword puppet? Han Fei didn't know. What was the difference? Although Han Fei was very unhappy about the old turtle's misjudgment, he couldn't let it go just because of this. After all, this old turtle was going to become his old servant. Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, what is the soul of the sword puppet?" The old turtle seemed to be a little guilty and immediately said, "Some people control swords, and some swords control people. When people control swords, they become one with the sword. When the sword controls people, they sacrifice themselves to feed the sword. When they are alive, they will become the sword puppet. When they die, they will become the soul of the sword puppet." Suddenly, the old turtle took a breath and said, "You mean, this person is a sword puppet?" Han Fei didn't deny it. "He is a sword puppet." "Why?" The old turtle said, "If he is a sword puppet, there should be a sword master. A sword puppet is equivalent to a sword servant. No matter how powerful he is just a servant. Above him, there must be an even more powerful expert." "I see." Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. If what the old turtle said was true, the origin of the Heavenly Sword sect was very likely related to the sword master of the Sword God Palace. Of course, Han Fei didn't believe it. Could the sword master of the Heavenly Sword sect still be alive? However, perhaps, because of the death of the sword master, the people of the Heavenly Sword sect had already forgotten this. After all, here in the Abyssal Chasm, there was still a sword puppet of the Sword God Palace. Tell me, if the sword master was still alive, would he allow his puppet to remain here? Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1522. In any case, the sword puppet had remained here for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, all the sword chi in the Abyssal Chasm had disappeared. As for the swordsman, because of the disappearance of the vast amount of sword chi, and because the soul of the sword puppet was possessed, it seemed to have lost the support of its skeleton and directly collapsed. In the depths of the abyssal chasm, Han Fei didn't get anything good and almost hurt himself. But fortunately, Han Fei had remembered a lot of strange sword moves. He had memorized a lot and felt that he could learn a lot, but it wasn't very systematic. It seemed that in the next few days, he could use the Gemini divine arts to cultivate. Although the sword puppet had disappeared, Han Fei pondered a question. Even the sword master's puppet could preserve its soul to this day. What about the real sword master? Was the strongest member of the Heavenly Sword sect really the master of the Heavenly Sword? The Sword God's Palace, the Nine Palaces Sky, the Waterwood Sky, the Golden Crow Sky. If he added his own Yin-Yang Sky, he had already come into contact with 5 immortal palaces. And these immortal palaces gave Han Fei the feeling that they were strong, very strong. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei spent a whole month digesting the sword move. Han Fei found a problem. He couldn't simulate most of the sword techniques in the Sword God Palace. For example, one of the seemingly simple sword strikes was extremely powerful. It pierced through the void as if it was piercing through a layer of paper. It sounded quite simple. But in reality, such a powerful attack, how could there be no movement at all? In the old tortoise's words, he specialized in swordsmanship and had a firm Tao heart, so he should have had such achievements in swordsmanship. In the old turtle's eyes, sword cultivators were very different from other cultivators. They were the most powerful group in the world. Han Fei couldn't help thinking of Tengu. Tengu had been in the Heavenly Sword sect for so long, but he still used the halberd in the end. Tengu had told himself more than once that it wasn't time for him to use a sword because he hadn't found his own path. At this moment, Han Fei was wondering what the so-called path of swordsmanship of the Heavenly Sword sect was. Was this the sword Tao that focused on one's own heart? Perhaps, only by finding this path would there be a reasonable explanation for the sword techniques that he was unable to learn. But at least for now, Han Fei had no time to study it. There was nothing he could do about it. As the successor of the Yin-Yang Sky, he was being forced to move forward by many invisible forces. He couldn't give the big families of the 1,000-star city any chance. He had to seize the time to grow up and wipe out these people. There was also the Wall of Death. Both the Waterwood Sky and the Yin-Yang Sky were showing signs of weakening. Otherwise, how could the Black Killer Snail King send so many experts here? If the Wall of Death were to crack open one day, both the Yin-Yang Sky and the Waterwood Sky would be in great trouble. Therefore, Han Fei knew that he was far from the point where he could spend his time on spells in peace. I haven't searched for the 36 immortal palaces yet. Let's wait for a while before talking about these great techniques. After leaving Forge the Universe, it was only 10 days before Han Fei left the Scattered Stars Island. Before leaving this place, Han Fei was a little worried about the water fairy, so he entered the 9-palace array again to take a look. In the end, he saw that Water Immortal's great Tao seed had sprouted a tender shoot. Seeing this scene, Han Fei left straight away. It seemed that at this speed, it would take some time for Water Immortal to grow up, so he wasn't in a hurry. When leaving the abyssal chasm, Han Fei didn't say goodbye to Xiao Sei. Since the Time Dragon Carp had a plan, he didn't need to worry. Otherwise, what if something happened to the Time Dragon Carp with a little pudding? Steps into the sea. When Han Fei came here again, he found that this place had become as crowded as before. Han Fei casually turned into an ordinary person and stood on the platform on the sea again. As far as the eye could see, there were all kinds of stalls, and all kinds of low-level resources were waiting to be sold. Someone shouted, "The freshly harvested sea willow juice is on sale." Someone seemed to be unfamiliar with Han Fei and came up to him. "Brother, I have something good here. Do you want to have a look?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "No need." The man chased after Han Fei. "Brother, you look familiar, so I let you have a look. I can't show it to ordinary people." Han Fei smiled slightly. Oh? Then I'd like to have a look. The young man quietly took out a small stone from his pocket and showed it to Han Fei. Do you know what this is? This is an ultra-quality treasure that will only appear after the 100th floor. Han Fei smiled slightly. Interesting. Didn't they say that the steps into the sea no longer produce soul crystals? Are you sure you got it from the steps into the sea? The man looked at Han Fei up and down. Can you recognize soul crystals? This shows that Han Fei is not an ordinary person. However, seeing Han Fei's strength as an intermediate dangling fisher, the man immediately smiled and said, "Hey, brother, your news is lagging behind. In the past, the steps into the sea was indeed turbulent for a few years. However, it was only turbulent for 3 years. After that, everything returned to normal. Otherwise, how can there be so many people here? Brother, since you can recognize soul crystals, do you want them? This thing is extremely rare. I can give it to you for 20 spiritual fruit. How about that?" Humph. Han Fei rolled his eyes, patted the man on the shoulder, and said, "Go lie to others. Maybe you can get it." With that, Han Fei took out a fishing boat and flew directly into the sky. Han Fei wouldn't go in directly from the entrance. In fact, with his current strength as a venerable, he couldn't get in at all. However, after all, he had been to the bottom floor. Over there, he had dug and climbed the stairs, causing him to be covered with cuts and bruises. Even now, there were still traces of his own blood. Therefore, Han Fei only needed to draw a teleportation array with his blood as a guide, and he could go over. The reason why Han Fei came to the steps into the sea was that he wanted to see what the structure of the steps into the sea was. In fact, Han Fei's perception scanned several times and found that under the steps into the sea, a place that he couldn't detect before, was a large array. The formation was square, as large as the steps into the sea. The eye of the large array was not on the outside, so it must be inside the steps into the sea. It was most likely in the place where the altar was. According to the depth of the seawater, Han Fei soon determined that the steps into the sea was a small world connected to an independent space. With a thought, the 9-palace destiny ruler appeared in front of Han Fei. This time, Han Fei wanted to know what the consequences would be if he went to the altar. As the scale slid in the air, it landed directly in the palace of desperation. Han Fei, son of AB** Tisich. Han Fei's face darkened. He had just experienced the difficulty of the great misfortune, and he almost blew himself up and sacrificed 200 years of vitality. Even then, he might not be able to destroy the soul of the sword puppet alone. Now, he was once again in a hopeless situation? Damn it, could it be that the puppet below had become a king? Beep. When Han Fei was hesitating whether to go to the steps into the sea or not, he heard a dragon boat roaring 20,000 kilometers away. Scanning with his perception, Han Fei saw that on the top deck of the dragon boat, 2 people were looking at him. F***ck, swish! The fishing boat quickly disappeared into the sky. After a few minutes, there was no sign of the fishing boat in the sky. And just now, the person who wanted to sell things to Han Fei was about to call Han Fei down and sell the soul crystals at a cheaper price. However, Han Fei left with a swish. This person was a little surprised. This person came to the steps into the sea but left without doing anything. What does he mean? After a moment, on the dragon boat, the void trembled slightly, and Han Fei appeared directly on the top deck. Han Fei said helplessly, "Old Han, you are so relaxed. Senior Li, are you going to retire here now?" Li Daxian laughed and scolded, "Retire? If you don't wipe out the big families, how can we dare to retire?" Han Guanshu looked at Han Fei and said, "Did you go to the abyssal chasm?" Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is this also part of your plan?" Han Guanshu shook his head. "No. It's just that the great immortal bet with me that you would go to the chaotic ocean first." Han Fei knew that the chaotic ocean Han Guanshu was talking about was the Wall of Death. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Where else did you bet? The chaotic ocean, the abyssal chasm, the steps into the sea, the waterwood sky. Just these 4 places in total. Han Fei moved the corners of his mouth and sneered. You really know how to gamble. It seems that old Han won the bet. Li Daxian sneered. He knows how to calculate, but I don't. This bet was never fair in the first place. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. The thug patriarch's words reminded him that old Han knew how to calculate. What did old Han mean? Old Han was simply too good at calculating. He had almost calculated his entire life into it. Coincidentally, he had just obtained the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler and learned about the 9-Palace Heaven. Immediately, an extremely bold idea appeared in Han Fei's mind. Han Fei immediately stared at old Han as if there was something wrong with him. Seeing this, Li Daxian muttered, What? What can't you say in front of me? Han Guanshu smiled, pushed a cup of tea to Han Fei, and looked at Li Daxian. There are always some secrets between father and son. You don't even have a wife. You don't understand. Humph. Li Tianshan drank a mouthful of tea and disappeared right away. Han Fei asked, Old Han, do you know what I'm thinking? Han Guanshu smiled faintly. I'm not a parasite in your stomach. How would I know? Han Fei didn't beat around the bush and said directly, I'm talking about the 9-Palace Heaven. Are you from the 9-Palace Heaven? Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1523. Han Guanshu looked at Han Fei casually and smiled. What do you think? Hiss. Han Fei gasped. So, the Yi Nan in the secret realm was you? However, this time, Han Guanshu shook his head. No, that's not me. Han Fei said, That's impossible. How can there be such a coincidence in the world? You are from the 9-Palace Heaven, and the abyssal chasm happened to be caused by the fight between the 9-Palace Heaven and the Sword God's Palace. Han Guanshu said, I've been there, but I'm not that person. Maybe I did have a relationship with that person many years ago, but I'm not him. Han Fei was a little confused. From this point of view, old Han didn't have to hide it from him. However, he was quite curious. If old Han was not that person, why did he also come from the 9-Palace Heaven? The 9-Palace Destiny Ruler appeared in Han Fei's hand. What about this? Since you are from the 9-Palace Heaven, and you were so powerful a long time ago, why don't you take this away? Looking at the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler, old Han said leisurely, How should I put it? You know, sometimes a holy weapon doesn't necessarily mean that it is very powerful, right? Usually, they just have some special and powerful characteristic. In terms of combat power, a holy weapon should be weaker than a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Shouldn't it be a higher level? Old Han nodded. A higher level, indeed. However, each holy weapon has its own function. The greatest function of this 9-Palace Destiny Ruler is to change one's luck and save people from desperate situations. However, its function is also limited. Perhaps there will be a time when I need it in the future. But for now, it's more useful to you. Han Fei played with the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler and said, So, you deliberately left it to me? Han Guanshu nodded noncommittally and then said, Under many coincidences, you are the most suitable person to hold it. There was no need to calculate at all. Everything was predetermined. Why did you get the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler first, and then go to the steps into the sea? It's all because of luck that even you don't know. Han Fei was silent for a while. So, I can't go to a place that is marked as a desperate situation? Han Guanshu said, It's not impossible. Since you have the 9 Palaces Fate Ruler, you can change your fate. Li Daxian and I are here in the Level 3 fishery. Even if you forcibly open the seal of the steps into the sea, we can suppress the ferocious creature below. However, the price is a bit high. Not only will the balance of the Level 3 fishery be destroyed, but you, Li Daxian, and that ferocious creature will also be exposed. It is very likely that it will lead to the destruction of all living beings. We will win, we will definitely win. But it's up to you whether to do it or not. Of course, Han Fei couldn't choose. Since it was displayed as a hopeless situation, it meant that with his current strength, it was not enough to solve this problem. The Nine Palaces' ruler of fortune also said that one couldn't forcefully change one's fate. One could only change it indirectly. This side? There were too many possibilities. Although Han Fei was surprised, he found it reasonable. It would be a pity if old Han didn't come from the Nine Palace Heavens. Such a talented person would be wasted. No longer thinking about whether to enter the steps into the sea or not, Han Fei said, "What are the rankings of the Nine Palace Heaven and the Sword God's Palace respectively? Is it good or bad?" Old Han said lightly, "You are becoming more and more interested in the immortal palaces. Very good," he said. "The Nine Palace ranks 8th, and the Sword God ranks 10th. As you know, the 9th is the Yin-Yang Heaven. However, this ranking is not completely true. Because in every immortal palace, if they reach the extreme, the strongest will be extremely powerful. For example, the Nine Palace Heaven, if I have all the secrets of heaven, who can shake me? Another example is the Sword God's Palace. In terms of attack, the Sword God ranks first, and even the Grand Pure and Chaos are inferior." Han Fei couldn't help asking, "What about the Yin-Yang Heaven?" Han Guanshu smiled slightly. "It depends on how you explore it. You should have seen your mother. The Yin-Yang Heaven has the great Tao of Yin and Yang, and its core is the Yin-Yang immortal art. In terms of survival, the Yin-Yang Heaven ranks first." Yin-Yang immortal art? Han Fei paused for a moment and then said, "I don't know what the Yin-Yang immortal art is. Why didn't anyone teach me such an awesome cultivation method?" Han Guanshu picked up the teacup, took a sip, and said, "The twin Yin-Yang spirit swallowing fish, the Gemini divine art. These are all core arts of the Yin-Yang immortal art. Of course, you haven't encountered some great arts yet just because it's not the right time. For example, the Eye of the Heavenly Path. When you get rid of it, you will completely embark on this path." The Eye of the Heavenly Path again. It seemed that the Eye of the Heavenly Path had completely sealed the Yin-Yang Heaven. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Okay, let's take it slow. Anyway, I have too many great arts to use now." "But old Han, shouldn't you tell me which 36 immortal palaces they are? What are their characteristics?" Han Guanshu said, "I wanted to tell you when you could leave the Yin-Yang Heaven. Since you've asked, I'll tell you about it." Han Guanshu said leisurely, "The 36 mysterious heavens are Grand Pure, Chaos, Wuji, Golden Crow, Dragon Subduing, Colored Glass, Infinite, Dream Weaving, 5 Elements, God Refining." Han Guanshu read out 36 immortal palaces in one breath, as if he were counting. Just by listening to the names, it was very possible to guess what kind of immortal palaces they were. Perhaps this was not a secret at all. It was something that was laid out in the open. Therefore, it was convenient for everyone to call it an appropriate name. For example, the Dream-Weaving Heaven was a terrifying immortal palace that exerted its illusion to the extreme. It was said that it could make people indulge in the illusion forever, unable to get out until they died of old age. Another example was the God-Refining Heaven, which was an immortal palace that specialized in the cultivation of the soul. They focused on the path of the strongest soul and studied all kinds of soul art. No ordinary people dared to offend them. Old Han also talked about the glass sky, which was wearing or was. It was said that there were many spirit gatherers in the glass sky. Although the name seemed refreshing, Han Fei didn't expect that these spirit gatherers would basically choose to practice body refining. Han Fei's head almost exploded when he heard this. However, Han Fei soon concluded a rule. The immortal palaces ranked in the top 18 seemed to be a little stronger. However, Han Fei didn't know if this was his illusion. After talking about the 36 immortal palaces, the father and son had nothing to talk about. Han Fei asked casually, "Old Han, is my mother in the river of time?" Han Guanshu shrugged. "Maybe, but it's not completely correct." Han Fei asked, "What problem did she encounter? Why did she design all this in such a complicated way? How are you going to find her?" Han Guanshu said lightly, "This is my business. It has little to do with you." Han Fei bared his teeth. "Why does it have nothing to do with me? How can I just stand by and watch?" Han Guanshu smiled. "When it's time for you to take care of it, I will naturally tell you. Otherwise, if I tell you too much now, it will only add to your troubles." Han Fei knew that it was probably because old Han didn't think he was strong enough. However, he hadn't become a half-king yet, had he? As long as the eye of the heavenly path was still there, old Han probably couldn't become a half-king. Since he couldn't become a half-king, why did he think he was not strong enough? However, Han Fei didn't dwell on this problem. As long as the eye of the heavenly path was in the yin-yang sky, old Han's actions would also be limited. "You want to find me? Then you'll have to cross the river of time." Half an hour later, Han Fei couldn't sit still anymore and finally said, "Well, I'm leaving." Han Guanshu said, "Okay. You must be careful when you go to the chaotic ocean. I can't predict the situation there, nor will I appear there to save people." Han Fei sneered. "I've already become a venerable. Besides, with the 9-palace ruler of Providence, I don't need anyone to save me." Han Fei thought to himself, in addition to the 9-palace ruler of Providence, I still have the demon purification pot and the nautical multitude instrument. With so many treasures in my hands, I should be able to survive the wall of death, right? Of course, Han Fei couldn't go in with his current appearance and posture. After all, there were kings inside the wall of death. The Black Killer Snail King might be waiting for him. 9 days later, holding the nautical multitude instrument, Han Fei ran half a circle around the yin-yang sky before he found a weak spot in the space. It was so weak that there was even a crack. Naturally, Han Fei wouldn't break it by force. He just went in. First of all, he set up an inescapable net within a radius of 100 kilometers. There were all kinds of killing arrays, defense arrays, mazes, and illusion arrays. There were more than 1,000 of them. After doing all this, Han Fei inscribed a super short-distance teleportation array on the wall of death with a Dao pattern. As for Han Fei himself, he cast the Gemini Divine Technique and turned into 2 clouds of smoke. Passing through such a barrier, Han Fei felt that even if there were loopholes, he would be slightly injured. Just like what Chao Xian did, he forced his way through the crack, only to leave an ownerless soul and energy behind. He didn't have to be in a hurry like Chao Xian. For 3 days in a row, Han Fei tried dozens of times and almost poked a hole in the barrier with Snowmorn. Finally, the crack was slightly widened. Then Han Fei opened a void channel through the short-distance teleportation array. The moment he entered the void channel, Han Fei seemed to have entered the void turbulence again. His Gemini body was minced into smoke several times. Thanks to his tough bones, he was still alive. Who? As soon as he appeared inside the wall of death, Han Fei sensed the violent blast of energy. Just in case, Han Fei entered Forge the Universe as soon as possible. In any case, he had to heal his wounds first. Third, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1524. When Han Fei came out of Forge the Universe, 6 hours had passed. In the past 6 hours, Han Fei had adjusted his state to the best. When he entered the wall of death just now, Han Fei didn't use his perception to investigate. After all, he was unfamiliar with this place. There were still kings here. God knew how big the wall of death was. Where did the kings live? To be honest, Han Fei was very confused. Why was there life in a barrier that looked like a wall? Why were there kings? And they could fly out of the island? Han Fei already knew that this wall of death was definitely the means of a mighty figure. But what kind of mighty figure was it? Han Fei didn't know at all. Now that Han Fei had just come in, what he had to do was to keep a low profile as much as possible. In any case, he had forged the universe. If he couldn't beat others, he still had a place to hide. Therefore, Han Fei felt that it shouldn't be a problem to keep himself alive. At this moment, Han Fei still appeared with the Gemini Divine technique. The body of white mist was still in Forge the Universe, and the body of black mist had left Forge the Universe. However, as soon as Han Fei appeared, he felt that the world was full of violent spiritual energy. Mixed with the spiritual energy, there was the smell of death and blood. In short, it was very weird. Han Fei glanced around. At least the area where he was, it was desolate. In the yellow sand seabed and seawater, very few creatures could be seen. Han Fei saw a big lobster crawling on the rocks of the seabed. The lobster was yellow all over. On its carapace there was some abnormal earthy yellow halo. Even on its carapace there were many stone-like bumps like shrimp warts. Han Fei's eyes glanced at it casually, and information appeared in his eyes. Name Shattered Crystal Dragon Pill Introduction. This is a lobster that lives near mineral deposits, feeds on mineral essence, and likes to hunt hard-armored creatures. Its crystal armor is extremely hard. Its big pincers are shockingly powerful and can snap dragons and snakes. When encountering powerful enemies, they will turn into crystals. It can't be broken without great strength. Level 78 Quality, Exotic Law Enforcement Blood Coagulation, contains spiritual energy greater than 69,505 points. Edible effect, long-term consumption can greatly increase blood energy and improve physique. Collectible Dragon Crystal Fragment, absorbable. This was the first creature Han Fei saw after he came here. It was an extremely ugly lobster covered in crystal fragments. However, even the random creatures they encountered had already reached the level of advanced explorers. Han Fei slightly released his senses and scanned 1,000 kilometers around him, only to find more than 20,000 creatures. Among them, there were about 200 of them, and they were all relatively strong. The strength of the other living beings seemed to be different. However, to Han Fei's surprise, none of the creatures were fighting or hunting each other. Han Fei also discovered that the environment where these creatures lived was this seemingly barren mineral vein. Apart from the shattered crystal dragon pill, there were many other creatures that relied on the mines to survive. Some carried the shell of the mine on their backs, while some used the mine as a knife and stabbed it into their bodies. They're not of the same species, but they don't hunt each other? Are they allies? Han Fei swam out in the raging spiritual energy. First of all, Han Fei wanted to see how big the Wall of Death was. Of course, Han Fei also knew very well that the Wall of Death might be much larger than he had imagined. After all, just its inner circumference, which covered the Yin-Yang heaven, was 25 million kilometers long. Whether it was the Waterwood heaven or the Yin-Yang heaven, it existed. Then what about the territories of the other immortal palaces? Was there a Wall of Death? Han Fei didn't know yet. Anyway, let's stroll around first. At least, it was something new after swimming in the Wall of Death for more than half a day. Han Fei discovered that the Gemini Divine technique needed to be unlocked. Under the bombardment of the raging spiritual energy for a long time, he needed to constantly resist the power of this spiritual energy storm. As a result, the Gemini Divine technique couldn't be used all the time. Of course, during this half a day, Han Fei didn't find nothing. Han Fei found that in such a violent spiritual energy turbulence, it was difficult for normal creatures or spiritual plants to exist in this Wall of Death. Therefore, he saw a lot of the seabed that looked like a weathered Gobi Desert. Although they were algae demonic plants, their bodies had been polished to an extremely smooth and round shape. They had round blade-like leaves and dark green light, which looked very creepy. Needless to say, these creatures were very powerful. If they weren't strong, they wouldn't be able to withstand such a harsh environment. Although there were many creatures, Han Fei still knew them. However, there was a huge change in the way they grew. perhaps because it had been surviving in the violent blasts of spiritual energy, even though it was only an anti-heaven blade. Its body and its dark belly seemed to be covered in a layer of armor. This layer of armor was very smooth, as if it existed to block the impact of the violent spiritual energy. In addition to the seabed, Han Fei also swam to the surface of the sea. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as he came to the surface of the sea, Han Fei felt the strong wind and huge waves. The strong wind and waves were nothing. Would cultivators be afraid of this? But the point was that in the strong wind and huge waves, there would be spatial cracks and other things appearing from time to time. The higher Han Fei flew, the more frequent the spatial cracks appeared. This reminded Han Fei of the Waterwood Heaven. In the battle of landing on the island, the scenes he encountered were exactly the same as the situation here. When Han Fei reached a height of 10,000 feet, it could be said that there were spatial cracks everywhere. This meant that in this wall of death, it was difficult to find the Sky Clan. Unless there were some places where there were no such spatial cracks, or in other words, some low-level birds might exist. However, they were far from being the Sky Clan. Entering Forge the Universe again, Han Fei deactivated the Gemini Divine technique. At the same time, he grabbed the 9 Palace Ruler of Fortune and did a divination for himself. As a result, the divination showed that it was ominous. Han Fei was speechless. Why is it not a lucky divination every time I use it? I'm such a lucky person, but I haven't even encountered an auspicious divination once? It's really depressing. But this was an ominous divination. It shouldn't be very dangerous. After all, he had encountered great ominous divination and knew how difficult it was. Without thinking much, Han Fei left Forge the Universe. At this time, he casually transformed into another person in his complete state. This was the image of a middle-aged man that Han Fei had disguised in the Wind and Rain village. This time, as soon as he came out, Han Fei happened to encounter a seahorse swimming in the sea. Most of the time, seahorses were relatively docile creatures. In Han Fei's impression, seahorses were not very dangerous. However, this one was different. In its long mouth, sharp teeth were bursting out. Its eyes were different from the round eyeballs of human beings. It had a squinting, flat, and long shape. Just from the look in his eyes, it seemed like he was about to fight. Not only that, this seahorse even grew hands. When it saw Han Fei with a puff, it stretched out 2 hands. Its hands were covered with scales, and it grabbed 2 big spears out of thin air. In Han Fei's eyes, information appeared. Name War Seahorse. Introduction: a mutant seahorse with a little ancient, exotic bloodline. It is extremely belligerent and good at taking advantage of the situation. The War Seahorse has extremely high intelligence and can imitate various combat skills of other creatures. Be careful. Level 79 Quality: Exotic, Mutated. Law Enforcer. War Shadow contains spiritual energy greater than 72,505 points. Effect: long-term consumption can greatly increase spiritual power. Collectible: Horse Tendon, Absorbable Clatter. At that moment, Han Fei saw seahorse phantoms within a kilometer in front of him. Knowing that this seahorse had used a combat skill, Han Fei felt that thousands of dazzling lights were hitting his soul. Han Fei thought to himself, I haven't even taken action yet, but I've already been targeted by a seahorse. Chilla! Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed at the void, drawing out a cold knife light. As soon as the knife was drawn, 10,000 shadows were broken, and the galloping warhorse phantoms were swept away by the knife. Gotcha! The 2 long spears in the hands of the war seahorse were cut off by the knife drawing technique. Seeing that the seahorse still wanted to run, Han Fei twisted his body and appeared on its back. Han Fei's void lines pressed directly on the war seahorse. In his head, scenes of this seahorse herds, or other creatures hunting together appeared. There was nothing to see, so Han Fei slapped the seahorse to death, absorbed some of its vitality and soul power, and threw it into Forge the Universe. Standing in the surging sea currents, Han Fei was dumbfounded. This place is so big. How long will it take me to find it? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. Why did he come here? To improve his strength, to polish his foundation, and to make a breakthrough to the mid-level venerable realm. With that in mind, the nautical panorama began to operate. Golyalo! The nautical panorama rotated rapidly and pointed in a direction that Han Fei didn't know. Han Fei looked at it from a distance. Since he encountered an ominous hexagram, this trip wouldn't be a big problem. Believing in the result of the Nine-Palace ruler of Providence, Han Fei's perception swept more than 20,000 kilometers away. As a result, at the same time, another perception swept back. Damn it! Han Fei was stunned for a moment. Damn it, are you kidding me? A creature that can perceive my perception can't be weaker than me, at least in terms of realm. Han Fei was dumbfounded. I've already encountered a venerable? Are the venerables so worthless in the Wall of Death? Sure enough, when Han Fei looked into the distance, he found himself staring at a crocodile. Han Fei was stunned. A crocodile? Swish. The crocodile said telepathically, "Huh. Are you a human?" Han Fei was intrigued. Wait, does this crocodile know humans? Could it be that there were humans in the Wall of Death? However, before Han Fei said anything, the crocodile's body shook and turned into a crocodile man, holding a knife in his hand and looking at Han Fei. Immortal City of Humans, why did you come to the territory of the Demon Beast Alliance? Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Immortal City of Humans? It turned out that humans also had territory in the Wall of Death? Han Fei was overjoyed at that moment. Would there be a peerless expert among those who could survive in the Wall of Death? Also, in addition to the Demon Beast Alliance and the Immortal City of Humans that the crocodile just mentioned, there should be a Black Blood Royal City here. Are there only these three forces in this Wall of Death? Han Fei felt that it was unnecessary for him to fight this crocodile. He might as well get closer to it first. Besides, is the Demon Beast Alliance a sea demon beast or some other kind of demon beast? There should be beasts in this Wall of Death. Are they also from this Demon Beast Alliance? Immediately, Han Fei said, "Bro, I think you've misunderstood me." Well, actually, let me tell you, I have a half-beast bloodline. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1525. Compared with the human immortal city, Han Fei felt that he could learn more about the Demon Beast Alliance. After all, this was a force that had never appeared in the Yin-Yang Heaven or the Waterwood Heaven. Was this force good or bad? What kind of demonic beasts were they? What was their relationship with the sea demons? These were all unknown. Therefore, Han Fei felt that he had to find an opportunity to explore and explain to this Demon Beast Alliance. When the Crocodile Man heard that Han Fei had a half-beast bloodline, he immediately frowned. Humans are humans and beasts are beasts. Demonic beasts all have their own characteristics, and it's difficult for them to transform into such a perfect human form. Unless you are a sea demon? When he said the word sea demon, Han Fei was overjoyed. Because he found that the Crocodile Man's eyes sharpened. It seemed that he was about to take action. It seemed that the relationship between the Demon Beast Alliance and the Sea Demons was also hostile. However, judging from the previous words, they didn't seem to be particularly friendly to humans. Han Fei's face suddenly changed, and he said with an ugly expression, "Brother, don't slander me. I, the Bull Demon King, am a peerless heavenly talent of the Water Buffalo clan. How can those mixed-blood fish demons compare to me?" Han Fei wondered if these so-called demonic beasts were marine creatures or land creatures. If a crocodile could live in the sea, there would be no problem. If it could live on land, there would also be no problem. When he was in the 100,000 Mountains, the old crocodile liked to live in the sea and also liked to hunt and kill demonic beasts in the sea. But in fact, there were also many marine beasts, and this crocodile in front of him must be related to land beasts. Han Fei originally wanted to say that he was a multicolored tiger, but if the crocodile man was a sea demon beast, he definitely wouldn't know who the multicolored tiger was. However, the old water buffalo was different. Water buffaloes and crocodiles were actually similar. They could live in the water or on land. No matter how you put it, they could be considered somewhat related. Han Fei even knew that in ancient mythology there was a Kuei ox, which was one of the divine beasts of the sea. Seeing that Han Fei's face changed, the crocodile man also realized that he had insulted him by saying that he was a sea demon. Immediately, the crocodile man's ferocious aura retracted a little. However, he was still vigilant as he said, "You say you're from the water buffalo tribe?" However, there were only 3 water buffaloes in the entire cage. Although they can also transform into humans, it's impossible for them to become like you. Why don't you show me your real body first? Han Fei frowned. This crocodile man mentioned a few words. One was a cage. They seemed to treat the wall of death as a cage. Also, there were really water buffaloes here? Furthermore, it was a water buffalo that could transform into a human. Their strength was at least at the explorer level. However, it did make sense. On his way here, there were explorer-level creatures everywhere. This was nothing to make a fuss about. Buzz! Han Fei's body began to swell. He activated the Beast King art and quickly turned into a buffalo. Moo! Han Fei purposely roared, and the rolling thunder reverberated in the sea. Han Fei stepped in the air and looked at the crocodile. See? I'm not an ordinary water buffalo. I'm a top heavenly talent of the water buffalo tribe. I can transform into a human when I'm a hidden fisher, and I'm no different from a law enforcer. Do you mean that there are my compatriots here? Brother, can you take me to have a look? The crocodile was also a little dumbfounded. Is he really a buffalo? Han Fei stepped through the void and was extremely fast. In a moment, he appeared beside the crocodile. At such a close distance, Han Fei found that this crocodile was already an intermediate venerable. No wonder he could detect Han Fei's perception at the first moment. When the crocodile saw Han Fei, it also looked him up and down and recognized his aura. It seemed to confirm that Han Fei was indeed a water buffalo. So the crocodile man laughed. Brother Buffalo, I'm Crocodile Iron. May I know where you are from? This cage is only so big. There are only 3 water buffaloes left, and only one of them is a venerable. If they knew that there was still one more member of the water buffalo tribe, they would definitely be very happy. Han Fei didn't transform into a human form again. Anyway, he knew the Beast King art, and he wasn't going to fight. He could maintain his ox form for a long time. When he couldn't maintain it, he would find an excuse to appear in human form. That would be easy. Alas, Han Fei sighed leisurely. Brother Crocodile, you may not believe me. I used to be trapped in a tower called the Demon Subduing Tower for thousands of years. It wasn't until a few years ago that the tower changed, and I took advantage of the chaos to escape. However, I was seriously injured by the void turbulence and had to recuperate for more than 2 years before I dared to show my face. Unexpectedly, as soon as I appeared, I met you, Brother Crocodile. The crocodile's eyes became brighter and brighter as he listened. He hurriedly said, So, Brother Buffalo came out of that tower? That makes sense. That tower almost smashed into the cage. Many experts went there, intending to break the cage with the help of that tower. In the end, we couldn't. Brother Buffalo, so you are from the outside world? What is the outside world like? Sure enough, Han Fei's eyes flickered. The wall of death was connected to each other. This meant that this was an even larger cage that had trapped both the Waterwood sky and the Yin-Yang sky within. And the Waterwood sky and the Yin-Yang sky should be separated by a wall. Maybe, from the third perspective, the 2 immortal palaces should be in the shape of a sun. Or, they should be fatter than the Yin-Yang sky and rounder. Moo! Han Fei called out. It felt as if he had found an organization. He sighed again. Brother Crocodile, when I first became an explorer, I was caught in the demon-subduing tower. I'm not very familiar with the outside world. However, I still roughly know the situation of the outside world. First of all, there are kings outside. The crocodile and Han Fei walked side by side. As soon as he heard that there were kings outside, the crocodile immediately showed a look of yearning. Sure enough, can only people outside become kings? Han Fei, however, heard the problem. He said in surprise, "No. Brother Crocodile, are there no kings in this cage?" The crocodile shook his head. "No, not even one. Look, this place is so turbulent and violent. Who can become a king here?" Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "What kind of joke is this? Isn't the black killer snail king a king? That guy's projection is already half a king. In the battle against the sea demons, this guy threw out 3 half-a-king projections and a lot of venerable projections. Isn't he a king?" Han Fei immediately frowned and said, "Brother Crocodile, are you sure there are no kings here? Do you know that the demon-subduing tower I came out of is a sealed place of the Sea Clan called the White Shell Royal City? The White Shell Royal City has a king. When we escaped from the demon-subduing tower, he said that even if we escaped here, there would be kings hunting us." "The White Shell Royal City?" The crocodile smacked his big mouth and said, "I've never heard of it. The king outside actually knows about the forces inside the cage? Then what he said must be wrong. There is only the Black Blood Royal City in the cage. There is only a false king inside, far from a real king." "False king?" Han Fei was stunned for a moment. "The Black Killer Snail King is a false king?" Seeing Han Fei's confusion, the crocodile rubbed Han Fei with his tail and said, "Brother Ox, the so-called false king is a half-king who failed the king's tribulation but didn't die. He has no hope of becoming a king in this life. However, he is stronger than a half-king. So, he is actually still a half-king. There are such half-kings in our demon-beast alliance too." "Oh, really? You scared me to death. I thought there would really be a king coming to kill me." The crocodile smiled and said, "Brother Ox, don't panic. I'll take you to our demon-beast alliance. In this cage, our demon-beast alliance is one of the 4 major forces. Now that we have you, Brother Ox, we'll be even more powerful." Han Fei's heart did a flip. For major forces? It seemed that there were other creatures besides sea demons, human beings, and demon beasts. Han Fei asked, "Brother Crocodile, how many venerables does our demon-beast alliance have compared to other forces?" The crocodile grinned and said, "Not many. It was rather difficult to become a venerable. However, compared to the human race's immortal city, the sea demon's black blood city, and the demon plant terror forest, our demon-beast alliance's myriad beast island has the most venerables, a total of 297. With the addition of Brother Nyo, there are now 298 of them. Among them, there are 11 quasi-kings, 38 pinnacle venerable ones, 56 high-rank venerable ones, 72 middle-rank venerable ones, and 120 primary-rank venerable ones. Judging from your strength, you should be at the pinnacle of the primary-rank venerable ones, right?" Han Fei's heart sank. F***ck, aren't there too many experts? There were only 11 half-king kings? Even if all the supremacies of the yin-yang heaven and the water would heaven join forces, they still wouldn't be able to defeat any one of the forces in the Wall of Death. In other words, anyone who emerged from the Wall of Death would be able to dominate the yin-yang sky. As for Shuemu Tian, they probably wouldn't be able to take it. But what about the yin-yang sky? These people could definitely take them down. Han Fei secretly took a deep breath. Fortunately, he had come in first. This wall of death must not be broken for now. He had to take advantage of this opportunity to continue growing and become a king as soon as possible. Oh no. At least, he had to reach the peak as soon as possible and become a quasi-king. Only when he reached that realm would he have the capital to challenge any force in the yin-yang heaven, the water-wood heaven, or the wall of death. Han Fei was confident that once he became a quasi-king, he would definitely be able to defeat the so-called quasi-king. Han Fei and the crocodile chatted while walking in the void. Han Fei asked, "Brother Crocodile, you just mentioned the human clan's immortal city. Are they our enemies?" The crocodile buzzed. "The human clan can't be regarded as enemies. It's just that they are the weakest force in the cage. It seems that there are only about 100 venerables. They border the Black Blood Royal City, so wars often break out. Many people have turned to undead creatures. Therefore, the city was filled with a deathly aura. There are only a few living people, most of them are undead creatures." Hearing that, Han Fei's heart sank. "Are humans so miserable in cages too?" Han Fei asked. "Why don't the Demon Beast Alliance help them? Sea monsters are not good people." The crocodile said, "How? Our Demon Beast Alliance has to fight against both the Black Blood Royal City and the Forest of Terror. The human clan used to be allies, but more and more people have turned to undead creatures. The relationship between us has gradually become unfriendly. Do you know about undead creatures? I don't know if they are dead or alive." As the crocodile spoke, he glanced at Han Fei and said, "Hey, Brother Nyo, you said that you are half beast. Are you half human?" Hearing this, Han Fei nodded and said, "Yes. In my inherited memory, my mother used to be the top heavenly talent of the human clan." Second update. Please vote end of this chapter. Chapter 1526. When Han Fei heard about the immortal city of the human clan, he was quite amazed. During the Waterwood Heavenly Island battle, he had been to the human territory. A woman had even given him a death bone soon. Although he had never had any use for that thing. After all, undead creatures were still relatively rare, and most of them could only be encountered in secret realms. Nowadays, he didn't go to secret realms much either. If he hadn't heard about the immortal city from the crocodile, he would have almost forgotten about the death bones soon. Of course, Han Fei was still rational. He was now pretending to be a cow. There should be other so-called clansmen in the Monster Beast Alliance. If he went, his days would be better. Even if he found a way to go to the human race's immortal city, what could he do? There were simply too many experts in the cage world. Just the Demon Beast Alliance alone had almost 300 venerables. He was just a peak-level beginner supremacy. Oh no. In fact, this peak level was a little illusory. It was because his foundation had not been polished completely. Although Yangming possessed the strength of a high rank or even a top-grade venerable one, it was only temporary. In this place where there were so many experts, it would be very difficult for him to fight one against many if he was not careful, such as being surrounded. Therefore, his top priority now was to improve his strength. Even if he wanted to cause trouble, didn't Crocodile Tai say it himself? The Demon Beast Alliance could fight against Black Blood City and the Forest of Horrors at the same time. He should have plenty of opportunities to train. Han Fei immediately made up his mind. When he was in the Demon Beast Alliance, he would become familiar with them. In the end, he slowly revealed his identity as a human. With such a large group of super experts, he might be able to win them over. Of course, this was the best-case scenario. In the worst-case scenario, the humans and the Monster Beast Alliance would not become enemies. Therefore, he should come to the Monster Beast Alliance first. As they chatted along the way, the two of them had already traveled over 1,000,000 li, but they still had not arrived at the so-called 10,000 Beast Island. Han Fei was speechless. This crocodile iron was really good at running. Han Fei said, "Brother Crocodile, you and I are really fated. As soon as I appeared, I met you. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know where to go." Crocodile Tai said casually, "Me? What was this?" Actually, Old Goat sensed some movement in the void over there, so he sent me to take a look. When you came out of hiding, you must have triggered the void seal and attracted the Old Goat's attention. Old Goat? Crocodile smiled and said, "I am a half-king of our Monster Beast Alliance. I am good at foresight." Han Fei heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his entry into the Wall of Death had attracted the attention of creatures. However, perhaps he had entered too quickly, and there were no experts there, so he hadn't been discovered immediately. Several hours later, after flying for more than 1.6 million kilometers, Han Fei finally saw a huge island. Knowing that this should be the so-called Thousand Beast Island, Han Fei looked at Crocodile Railway in advance. "Can my soul scan the entire island?" Crocodile smiled and said, "Then you might not be able to sweep them all. Our 10,000 Beast Island is not small, it is at least 100,000 li wide. When you become a half-king, you should be able to see the entire myriad Beast Island." When Crocodile Railway explained, dozens of senses fell on Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei was still a big water buffalo, wagging his tail, stepping on the void, and following Crocodile Railway. When Han Fei walked into this Thousand Beast Island, he felt helpless. Sure enough, as expected. What Thousand Beast Island? There were actually not many buildings on it, but there were many mountains. There were great swamps, deserts, mountains, rivers, volcanoes, ice islands. In short, there were all kinds of terrains. Of course, because of the violent spiritual energy in the Wall of Death, there was actually a seal on this island. It should be a seal set up by many experts to protect the peace of this corner of the island. The instinct of monsters was to occupy a mountain and be the king. Just by drilling a hole, they would feel that this was their territory. Whether it was in ancient times or today. Or rather, these monsters had been here since the Age of Doom. When heading to the center of the island, Han Fei's senses swept the rolling mountains and jungles, and he found a large number of beasts. Because of the existence of the seal, Han Fei also found some of the Sky Clan. However, there were not many of them, and they were not very strong. Crocodile Railway introduced enthusiastically, "Brother Nyo, this is our Thousand Beast Island. Because there are 2 battlefields to guard and there are patrols everywhere, not all the venerables are on the island. Nearly half of the venerables haven't come back yet. But don't worry, I've just told Lightning to inform your clansmen to come back. Ha ha! You can't imagine how surprised they will be." Lightning. Crocodile Railway nodded. Lei Bao, do you know about it? It's very fast. Han Fei thought to himself, King know about it. No wonder it's called lightning. But why did you inform them to come back? But forget it. With the Beast King art and the art of deception, I can still pretend to be strong. Soon, Han Fei came to the center of the so-called Thousand Beast Island, which was the place where the venerables often gathered, according to Crocodile Railway. Han Fei took a look here. Oh my god! This is King Huge Great Rift Gorge. The rift connected to the ocean. In the Great Rift Gorge, the wind was raging. As soon as Han Fei stepped into this Great Rift Gorge, he felt the terrifying wind scraping his skin. If an explorer came to this place, he would probably be scraped to death in less than 10 minutes. His flesh would be scraped dry. Clatter, 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 swish. 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 As soon as Han Fei stepped into the wind, venerables appeared one after another. Han Fei saw an ape, a lion, a wolf, a tiger, a python. Suddenly, Han Fei realized that he felt as if he had returned to the 100,000 mountains. Han Fei had a hunch. Perhaps, from the Age of Doom to the present, not all the beasts had perished, but they had changed places to live. Han Fei couldn't help but grin. Seeing the beasts, he felt inexplicably familiar. After all, it was a good thing that they hadn't perished. He was now more confident in winning the return of the beast. These were all land creatures. This was the real demon-beast alliance, which was completely different from the sea demon-beast. His previous worries were no longer a concern. A python stuck out its tongue and said, "Oh, here comes a bull. It seems that Nyo Dali will have a companion in the future." A silver giant wolf said in a healthy voice, "Nyo Dali is indeed lucky. I didn't expect that a fellow clansman would come at this time." A big ape swaggered to Han Fei and greeted him. "Brother Bull Demon King, my name is Ape Demon. You're really bold to give yourself a name. You even gave yourself the suffix king. I've wanted to add the word king to my name for a long time, but I didn't dare to because I was afraid of being beaten. After saying that, Ape Demon King pinched Han Fei's bones and said in surprise, "What a strong physique. Brother Bull Demon King, are you a body refiner?" Han Fei really wanted to roll his eyes at him, but he still said calmly, "Brother Ape, you're making fun of me. I never thought that I would meet all of you one day. I thought there were no beasts in this world. Of course, I have to give myself a domineering name. Otherwise, what if the world forgets the beast? As for the path of body refinement, I think half of you here should be taking this path, right?" A giant bear walked over with its arms hanging down. "Yes, we are all beasts, so it's normal for us to take the path of body refinement. Brother Bull Demon King, let's practice?" At the sight of this giant bear, Han Fei thought of the berserk bear, which was a silly bear. Practice, practice, practice? He was either eating or practicing every day. However, before Han Fei could speak, he heard a lion say, "No. Brother Bull Demon King hasn't met everyone yet. What are you going to practice for? Go away." The python nodded. "Yes, I heard from Crocodile Tai that Brother Bull Demon King has been locked in the Demon Suppressing Tower in the Sea Demon King City, isolated from the world. He hasn't even met all of us beasts yet. Let Brother Bull Demon King familiarize himself with the 10,000 Beast Island first." Han Fei thought to himself, with so many venerables, why not practice if I can practice? I was worried that no one would practice. If I fight every day, the speed of foundation polishing will definitely be dozens of times faster. After a battle, all kinds of experience won't be wasted. Even in the battle with the sword puppet in the abyssal chasm in the level 3 fishery, although his soul was almost damaged by the opponent's attack, he did gain a lot. Han Fei said, "Everyone, in fact, I happen to be stuck in the peak level junior venerable, and I need to polish my foundation and prepare for a breakthrough. However, as you all know, I have been trapped in the demon suppressing tower of the Sea Clan for a long time in the outside world. There are all kinds of humanoid creatures there, so I have long been used to fighting in human form. I wonder if you are used to fighting in human form?" "Ah, why wouldn't I be used to it?" As he spoke, he saw a goat man with 2 horns on his head walking over. Divine Son? Han Fei was stunned for a moment and immediately came back to his senses. This was obviously not a divine son, but a goat man who had transformed into a human and looked a little bit like one. This should be the old goat that Crocodile Tai mentioned, who had predicted the void fluctuations when he came. The old goat said, "Our 10,000 Beast Island has a battlefield with the Sea Clan, and we are also used to fighting in human form. Of course, my body is slightly more comfortable." One of the 4 odd beasts, which should be a Qilin, said, however, "When fighting with the Forest of Horrors, my body is still more comfortable. It's not easy for the other party to take advantage of me." The old goat took a few steps forward and looked at Han Fei. "Little brother Bull Demon King, Crocodile Tai said that you have a half-beast bloodline and half a human bloodline. Is it true that half of my blood is from the human clan?" Han Fei felt that it would not be too much to show this matter earlier. If he showed it earlier, it would be easier for him to move in human form on the 10,000 Beast Island. At that time, as long as he used the art of deception, he would be able to maintain the breath of the water buffalo. Han Fei's body quickly shrank and stood upright in the eyes of a group of ferocious beasts. For a moment, he put on a battle suit and looked magnificent, which amazed the beasts. A tiger said, "Huh! Is this a perfect transformation?" The giant bear roared, "This transformation technique is awesome. It's on par with me." The giant python curled up and transformed into a black-robed woman. However, there were some tattoo-like lines on her face. She said, "Oh, this transformation technique. Brother Bull Demon King, your human bloodline is still quite pure." Third update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1527. Of course, Han Fei would express his warlike side, which was also a common problem of the beast. Of course, water buffaloes had always been gentle, and the old bull Han Fei knew was also very gentle. Under normal circumstances, he didn't take the initiative to fight, but he was never afraid of fighting. At this moment, Han Fei became a human, burly and strong, and his skin was bronze. Although Han Fei deliberately changed his appearance, his transformation technique was still extremely perfect in the eyes of others. Han Fei knew this himself. When he was in the 100,000 Mountains, the water fairy transformation was beautiful enough, right? However, the parts under her feet were root. After the heavenly crystal transformation, he was black and had a stiff face. As for the Beast King, although he had the strength of a half-king, he didn't know how to control his strength when he attacked and talked. Therefore, when Han Fei showed his perfect human form, he immediately attracted the attention of all the people around. The old goat couldn't help but ask, "Can a human bloodline transform perfectly?" The tiger said, "Well, won't the human bloodline make your bloodline impure? Brother Bull Demon King, do you feel that your spiritual heritage has a limit?" Han Fei thought to himself, "I have to prove that I'm extraordinary. Otherwise, if I really cause trouble here in the future, I won't be able to explain it." But Han Fei grinned and said, "In fact, this will only make my bloodline stronger. You are all my seniors, and it has actually only taken me less than 3,000 years to cultivate to this day. Among them, I was trapped in the demon subduing tower for more than 2,700 years. Otherwise, how could my strength be so low?" "Hiss, what? You've only cultivated for 3,000 years? What? 3,000 years and you're already a junior peak level venerable?" Crocodile Tai said in shock. "Wait, you said that when you were imprisoned in the demon subduing tower, you had already become an explorer? Then it only took you more than 200 years to cultivate to the explorer realm?" For a moment, the beasts looked at each other. F***ck, is this a peerless heavenly talent? The lion said, "Bull Demon King, then what did you do in the demon subduing tower? If it were more than 200 years, you would already be an explorer. According to this growth rate, you are much more than a junior peak level venerable now." Han Fei's face darkened and he said leisurely, "In the demon subduing tower, spiritual energy is thin and there is not much energy. If he wanted to live, he had to keep fighting. There were countless ferocious sea beasts, demonic plants, and other creatures. Under normal circumstances, I would not be able to cultivate in peace. Therefore, in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, one had to learn to cultivate while fighting. Here that's it." With a thought, his body began to absorb spiritual energy and energy from the outside world spontaneously. Now, Han Fei just needed to blow it out. In any case, these people had never been to the Yao Ceiling Tower, so they had no idea what was going on inside. Moreover, in the demon subduing pagoda, one would have to fight all the time. He wasn't lying. Immediately, all the beasts cast comforting gazes at Han Fei, but they heard the serpent say, "It seems that the place where the sea demons are suppressing is no better than our cage." The tiger roared, "Brother Nyo, then you should be very powerful. Come, let's spar." The giant silver wolf said, "Golden Tiger, why are you in such a hurry? Brother Bull Demon King has just arrived at the Thousand Beast Island and we haven't even introduced him yet, and you're already so impatient?" The big bear also said, "Yeah, Golden Tiger, why are you in such a hurry? Brother Nyo is already here. Why are you afraid that we won't have a chance to fight? I have a Tao-seeking fish. I'll get it for you. Let's have a good meal first." The Golden Tiger's eyes glittered. "Xiong Chao Shui, you secretly hid a Tao-seeking fish? I have half a cloud dolphin. I'll give it to you too. Anyone else?" The old goat said, "Forget it. I cut a section of heaven-piercing bamboo in the forest of horrors. It can be used as a dish." The silver wolf said, "Heh. You're really frugal. I only have one thunder fire blue shark in the explorer level. Han Fei thought of something. Right, the beasts all like to eat it. That's even better than the human race. Han Fei said, guys, maybe. I do have some materials that I hunted in the demon-subduing pagoda. Everyone looked at Han Fei, and the serpent woman said, you've just arrived. How can we let you pay? Han Fei quickly said, don't worry, don't worry. I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. In the demon-subduing pagoda, apart from fighting, I like to study food. I believe that I have already reached the pinnacle of cooking. No one, including the human race, can cook better than me. The ape demon leaned over. Brother Nyo, what's a cooking? Crocodile Tai also leaned over and asked, is it delicious? Han Fei smiled mysteriously. With a swish, Han Fei took out a venerable realm octopus tentacle, a venerable realm crab pincer, an entire explorer dragon hornfish, and an explorer blood shadow shark. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei took out more than 20 explorer-level creatures. Everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. It was not because they were frightened by Han Fei's combat skills, but because Han Fei actually stuffed his sun moon shell with food. Everyone sighed. Just how delicious was this demon bull king? Suddenly, Crocodile Tai took a breath and said, this is the flesh and blood of Zhang Hua from the Black Blood Royal City. On the other side, the wild lion said, this crab pincer, if I'm not mistaken, should be the crab pincer of Qianwu from the Black Blood Royal City. Old Sheep said, Bull Demon King, when did you encounter the people from the Black Blood Royal City? Han Fei didn't expect that he would be recognized. He quickly thought about it in his mind. These sea demons should have gone to the Yinyang heaven before the battle on the Scattered Stars Island. Therefore, they should have left the site of these demon beasts a few years ago. Since the Black Blood Royal City sent these venerables to the Yinyang heaven, they must have concealed the news. However, the demon-subduing pagoda happened nearly 3 years ago, and the battle on the Scattered Stars Island happened more than a year ago. At this moment, of course, he couldn't say that these two had been killed by him. Otherwise, there would be a phenomenon when a venerable died. He couldn't say that these two were killed by him outside. After all, he had repeatedly stressed that he came from the demon-subduing pagoda. Besides, if he really said that he killed these two outside, didn't it mean that there was a way to get out of the wall of death? Han Fei said casually, Woo! These are the first two people I met when I came out of the demon-subduing pagoda. We had a brief confrontation, and the two of them were no match for me. I cut off a tentacle and a crab pincer each. The beasts immediately looked at Han Fei strangely. Crocodile Tai said, Brother Bull, did you fight them alone? Han Fei pretended to take it for granted and said, Yes. They are only one realm higher than me. It's not a big problem. Ape Demon rolled his eyes. Brother Bull, this Qianwu is an intermediate venerable. Besides, his carapace is extremely hard. You cut off his crab pincer? Han Fei scratched his head and said, Woo! That big crab? It's not bad. I hit it with my Vigor Divine Fist, but it doesn't feel very hard. The beasts. For a time, all kinds of speculations were going on in the hearts of the beasts. Although they were itching to spar with Han Fei. Was this Han Fei as strong as he said? However, he had put out a lot of snacks. This was obviously not the time to spar with him. In an instant, a group of demonic beasts called out, let's go, roar! The lion let out a loud roar and shouted, Everyone, come over and eat. If you have any treasures, bring them along. Big Bear shouted, Who has wine? Get more. After a while, as many as 102 venerables came. Han Fei panicked when he saw this scene. He thought to himself, with this combat power, if they are all on my side, then I'll go to the 1,000-star city. I'm afraid that in half an hour, the entire 1,000-star city will be destroyed. However, when he could suppress the Yinyang heaven and all these people, he would never think of a way to take them out with him. After all, apart from the venerables, could he take the other demonic beasts on the 10,000 Beast Island out? The number of explorers, law enforcers, and hidden fissures were too many to count. At this moment, all the venerables were looking at Han Fei. Just now, Han Fei had said that his cooking skills were unparalleled in the world. How could they not take a good look at him? Han Fei didn't panic. He beckoned the venerables to come to the mountain platform outside the Great Rift Gorge. Han Fei stretched out his hand and waved, and a large amount of water mist rolled over. The water mist formed a curtain and was extremely fast. Like a water gun, it quickly cleaned the entire ground and swept away a large amount of sand. Looking at the mountains of ingredients, Han Fei stretched out his hand and scooped up tons of fish oil. With a splash, the huge platform spanning 7 or 8 kilometers was swept again. Then, the venerables saw a large number of strange fruits floating in the air, which were crushed into foam by Han Fei. In the next moment, spiritual energy flames exploded with Han Fei as the center. He could only hear the sound of slurp 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 lingering in his ears. In an instant, the spicy smell of garlic directly swept into the noses of every demon beast venerable. Gulp! Someone swallowed inside. This Brother Nyo is really a picky person. He hasn't even eaten yet, but it smells so good. Clatter! Someone's wine jar fell to the ground, and he couldn't help drooling. He murmured, "Is this the so-called way of cooking?" Swish, 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 the sky was full of knife lights like flying locusts. The ingredients that were piled up like a mountain were cut into pieces, and there were cuts all over them. They were controlled by Han Fei and laid flat on this stone platform. The flames rose again, and the fire spread for 10 kilometers. The expressions of the venerables slowly became serious. What they saw was no longer limited to the ingredients, but Han Fei's control. Every piece of meat that was cut was steaming with spiritual fire. Those spiritual fires, some strong and some weak, were just distributed. The spiritual fire directly drilled in through the gaps of the knife lights, burning every part of these pieces of meat evenly. Hearing the sound of swallowing around him, Han Fei thought to himself, "It's always good to use food to pave the way. It seems that this wall of death is not as terrifying as I thought." Chapter 15:28. On the 10,000 Beast Island, next to the Great Rift Gorge, colorful smoke was flying. At this moment, everyone only saw colorful smoke floating in the sky. In fact, it was white salt, green and red peppers, garlic, cumin, and oil mist. In short, these were all things that these venerables didn't know at all. Even the wisest old goat among the demon beasts was dumbfounded at this moment. Old Yang and a few extremely powerful people were standing together in discussion. Someone said, "What are these things? Why have we never seen them before?" Someone was puzzled. The Bull Demon King can control water, fire, and knives. His soul power is astonishingly powerful. Indeed, he doesn't look like an ordinary junior venerable. Someone said, "There's no hurry. After the meal, let's have a friendly competition." This Bull Demon King seemed to be one of the more warlike types, and was rather forthright. "We'd better wait for Nyo Dali to come back and confirm it. If there's no problem, he's definitely a promising talent." The Serpent Woman said, "Isn't he a bull? I think there's no problem." The Silver Wolf said, "His identity as a beast can indeed be confirmed. However, don't forget that he has a human bloodline. So, does he belong to the human race or the Demon-Beast Alliance?" "Okay. Everyone, please feel free to have a taste." Han Fei saw an elephant trunk suddenly popping out. As she inhaled, all the smoke within a 10-kilometer radius was sucked into her stomach. Burp. Delicious. The bear said angrily, "Elephant Tutong, what are you doing? I haven't smelled enough yet. Why did you suck it all away?" He saw a huge woman who said shyly, "I haven't eaten yet." You eat. Munch. At this moment, dozens of people had already grabbed the oily barbecue on the ground and stuffed it into their mouth. More than 100 kilograms of meat were gone in one mouthful. A roar shook the sky and the golden tiger roared, The best taste in the world. It's so delicious. I feel that my tongue is about to explode. Crocodile Tai bit a large piece of meat, drooled as he ate, and said with spiritual power, "Brother Bull, where did you learn all this? In the future, can you teach us?" Han Fei slowly skewered a few squid tentacles and nibbled on them. I met a human boy in the demon suppressing tower and got some human seasoning from him. After studying day and night, studying the usage of seasonings, he finally made this kind of food. However, if Brother Crocodile wants to learn, I will definitely teach you. The serpent woman said, "This technique is not bad. It is indeed much more delicious than eating raw." Baji. Han Fei saw that the big bear bit out a big piece of meat with its mouth. With one bite, 200 to 300 caddies of meat were gone. Looking at the others, they were about the same. At this rate, the ingredients would soon be gone. This was just the beginning, and a third of the barbecue was already gone. Han Fei didn't want to cook again later. As the saying goes, delicacies pave the way. One meal is enough. Later on, whoever wanted to learn could go ahead and learn. Han Fei said with a smile, "Everyone, actually, this is not the way to eat food. You have to eat it in small bites like I do. If you eat too much at once, you will easily swallow it and not know the taste. However, if you eat it in small bites, you can taste the perfect combination of the ingredients and seasonings and let them roll on the tip of your tongue. Besides, there is an advantage to swallowing it in small bites. You can eat it slowly and enjoy the taste for a long time." Swish, swish, swish. As soon as Han Fei said this, he saw the venerables all transform. For a time, this place became a concentration camp for all kinds of unevolved humans. Perhaps it was not that they couldn't become more human. For example, if Han Fei guessed correctly, that tiger's strength had already reached the peak-level venerable realm. However, after transforming, he still only revealed his tiger head. Since he had the ability to transform the other parts of his body into human form, he shouldn't have revealed a complete tiger head. This meant that the other party wanted to keep some of his original characteristics and didn't want to abandon them. Someone said, "It's mainly because human mouths are too small. If I eat like this mouthful by mouthful, I can eat for a day and a night." Someone laughed and said, "Isn't it great to eat for a day and a night? Even if I were to eat for 10 days and 10 nights, I wouldn't mind." Even so, there were still people devouring it. They still felt that small bites were too slow. Delicious food should be stuffed into the stomach at once. Swish! Suddenly, Han Fei turned his head and saw a bolt of lightning flashing across the sky. Immediately afterward, a thunder leopard appeared. Soon after the thunder leopard appeared, Han Fei saw that more than 20,000 kilometers away, a bison was galloping wildly in the void. Behind it, 2 water buffaloes followed, and they were also galloping here. Moo! Before the person arrived, the sound arrived first. Han Fei glanced over there, only to see that the person had a smile on his face and a look of surprise in his eyes. Someone laughed and said, "Look, I've never seen Nyo Dolly so excited before. She actually ran all the way back." Someone clicked his tongue. "Great! Nyo Dolly can even find a compatriot of the same race. I'm so envious." Han Fei and Nyo Dolly looked at each other across the air. Gradually, the smile on Han Fei's face couldn't hold anymore. Because after Nyo Dolly noticed Han Fei, she found that Han Fei could transform into a human form perfectly, and she also transformed. However, Han Fei was dumbfounded. F***ck. Why is the guy named Dolly a woman? Can a woman be called Dolly? The ground shook, and Nyo Dolly stomped on the ground, causing it to collapse. As soon as he landed, Nyo Dolly fell silent. She seemed to be stunned too. She stared at Han Fei, looked him up and down, and tried to make her voice sharper. "Are you Bull Demon King?" Han Fei felt his blood freeze under Nyo Dolly's gaze. Of course, Han Fei couldn't afford to lose his image, could he? Helplessly, Han Fei smiled. "It's me," Nyo Dolly said in surprise. Why are you so perfect in human form? Before Han Fei spoke, Crocodile Tai said with a smile, I forgot to tell you when I asked Lightning to inform you. Brother Nyo has a pure human bloodline and is a half-beast. Nyo Dali immediately said, I don't mind. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What do you mean you don't mind? It's none of your business whether I have a human bloodline or not. Seeing Nyo Dali's awkward look, Han Fei roughly knew what Nyo Dali meant. In fact, Nyo Dali's appearance was not ugly. Except for the 2 horns on his head, his figure was petite and he was wearing a midriff-bearing suit. The battle suit wrapped the curves of his body, revealing his smooth skin, which was quite sexy. However, Han Fei couldn't bear to do that. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. My life is really full of ups and downs. How could I meet a female cow when I pretend to be a cow? Han Fei thought of something and immediately cupped his hands to Nyo Dali. Senior, I am a descendant of the flying divine cow, what did you call me? Nyo Dali's face darkened, and Han Fei didn't even finish his sentence. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei flashed out with a void twist. 2 big axes had already chopped at the place where he was just fighting. Seeing Nyo Dali attack, the group of demon beast venerables howled. Crocodile Tai laughed. Ha ha ha. Brother Nyo, there are only a few cows in this world. How dare you call me senior? You deserve to be beaten. The ape demon rolled on the ground. Brother Nyo, I really don't want to criticize you this time. It seems that you have been trapped in the demon-subduing tower for too long and have no idea that there is love in this world. The golden tiger shouted, Brother Nyo, I support you. To deal with a woman, first of all, you have to beat her down. Everyone else was watching the show. And the 2 explorers, as soon as they arrived, saw that Nyo Dali had already fought with the Bull Demon King. At this moment, the 2 of them were dumbfounded. Just now, on the way, didn't you say that we should be gentle when we meet? You call this gentle? Han Fei didn't care about their jeering. F***ck, I'm here to improve my strength, not to go on a blind date. I can't go on a blind date with a cow, Han Fei shouted. Wait, front. F***ck, you're serious? Han Fei only saw the huge axe smashing down. With a clang, Han Fei was directly smashed into the Great Rift Gorge and flew hundreds of kilometers away. Han Fei hurriedly said, Let's talk nicely. Nyo Dali stepped on the strong wind and held a big axe in his hand. Okay, let's talk nicely. There are only a few of us left in the Water Buffalo clan. Originally, there was nothing we could do. But now, as a man of the Water Buffalo clan, you don't want to have children with us, but you still want to call me senior? Who else can I hit if not you? Ha ha ha. Below, a group of people laughed. Staying in this cage every day, nothing new happened. Finally, a newcomer came. How could they not watch such a fight? These people, each carrying a piece of barbecue, took small bites, sat on the Great Rift Gorge, and watched the show. However, Han Fei thought to himself, yield? I can't yield. Han Fei shouted, Girl, it's not that I don't want to, but my heart has long been with someone else. As early as in the demon-subduing tower, I made a vow with Princess Iron Fan. In this life, I will never leave you. As long as I get married, I will never leave you. Moo, Princess Iron Fan? There are other members of the Water Buffalo clan? Where is she? Hearing Han Fei's words, Nyo Dali didn't get angry but asked in surprise. Hearing this, Han Fei immediately said, Princess Iron Fan is a human. We were separated during the riot in the demon-subduing tower. Moo. We are the Water Buffalo clan, but you ignored the important matter of carrying on the family line. How dare you be with a human? You traitor of the Buffalo clan, I'll kill you. Below, the 2 water buffaloes in the explorer realm also shouted, Sister, kill him. This is too much. The 3 of us can't even compare to a human? Sister, chop him into meat sauce. Han Fei suddenly remembered that he got a bad hexagram from his divination today. He didn't know where this bad hexagram came from. It turned out that it was waiting for him here. Chapter 1529. Bam! Han Fei didn't want to fight back. However, Niu Dali roared and his soul was shaken. Immediately afterward, the sky-splitting axe fell from the sky and struck 100 times. He was like a nuclear bomb crashing into the Great Rift Gorge. This Great Rift Gorge had been swept by the strong wind for tens of thousands of years. It was already extremely hard. However, at this moment, Han Fei left a mark on it. This was the result of passive defense in the face of a body practitioner. As soon as Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw a giant hoof of 100 meters falling from the sky. At that moment, Han Fei immediately bared his teeth. "Woman, I won't fight you because of you. Don't go too far. I'll trample you to death. Moo!" He suddenly got up and raised his fist. The crimson fist mark soared into the sky like a pillar of light. Rumble, under the surprised gazes of the venerables, Han Fei's terrifying blow actually blasted Niu Dali away. Crocodile Tai screamed, "Brother Niu, are you so powerful? A peak-level venerable can surpass me in terms of strength?" The old sheep said, "Did you forget just now? The Bull Demon King claims to be the descendant of the Flying Divine Bull. Although we have never heard of this Flying Divine Bull. Just from the name, we know it's extraordinary." The Python woman also said, "Yes, don't forget that the Bull Demon King has only cultivated for 3,000 years. Among them, he was trapped for more than 2,700 years. Otherwise, he might have the strength of an advanced venerable or even a peak-level venerable." The Golden Tiger also twisted his head and said, "Interesting. A venerable who can fight above his level. The Bull Demon King is indeed a heavenly talent of the Water Buffalo clan. I really want to go down there right now and compete with him." The old bear said, "Look at his physique. He was hit 100 times by Niu Dali, but he seems to be fine. The Bull Demon King's physique has definitely reached the advanced venerable level." The Silver Wolf nodded. "It seems that. He said that he fought every day in the Demon Suppressing Tower. This should be true. If it weren't for the endless battles, how could he have such a terrifying physique at the peak-level venerable level?" However, the elephant said, "More than that. Listen to the sound of the Bull Demon King being hit, the sound of his bones. If I'm not wrong, it should be the golden body." Hiss. Many people who were watching the show took a deep breath. Xiang Taunton's words caught their attention. The venerables began to pay attention. Generally speaking, it wasn't impossible for an Exalt Realm expert to attain the Golden Body Realm, but there were differences in the Golden Body Realm. If the Golden Body was not complete, it would not be strong enough. But if it was the indestructible Golden Body, tens of thousands of axe lights fell from the sky. Han Fei didn't want to expose his full strength at the first moment, so he just attacked with brute force. For a time, golden fist marks spewed out, and the invincible will dyed Han Fei's whole body with a layer of golden light. Hoo! The devouring art directly absorbed spiritual energy and energy from the raging spiritual energy ocean in the Great Rift Gorge. Niu Dali's strength was at the peak of the intermediate venerable, which was a small level higher than Han Fei's. In fact, a minor realm in the Exalt realm wasn't just slightly stronger in theory. But now, he could only see Han Fei attacking with his bare hands. The axe lights all over the sky exploded one after another, and none of them could shake Han Fei at all. Even Niu Dali could feel the strong recoil force. Since Han Fei was not weaker than him in terms of strength, then, in terms of soul power, Han Fei shouldn't be stronger than him, right? After all, Han Fei was stunned by his roar just now. Moo! Niu Dali was moaning. Han Fei sneered and moaned as well. The void exploded, and terrifying air waves leaped out of the Great Rift Gorge and rushed straight into the sky. But this time, Han Fei didn't seem to be affected. With a flip of his hand, he grabbed 2 sledgehammers from the void. BM, 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 Han Fei's figure frantically changed in the void. All of a sudden, hundreds of phantoms waved sledgehammers and attacked the sky. This time, it was Nyodali who didn't have time to react. Nyodali blocked the two axes horizontally, and spiritual energy surged from her body as if she was about to explode. However, the terrifying power of the divine hammers forcibly suppressed her explosive power. Bam! 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 The situation was suddenly reversed. Nyodali was crazily hammered by Han Fei and was crushed all the way into the rock wall of the Great Rift Gorge, leaving a long ravine. Han Fei stood proudly and looked straight at the sky. I, the Bull Demon King, am not the kind of person who will abandon me. Iron Fan may still be trapped in the demon-subduing tower, but I will concentrate on cultivation and reach the top as soon as possible. Then, I will kill my way back. Don't block my way. The serpent woman said, Okay, Dolly. Some things can't be rushed. Brother Nyo seems to be a man with a story. Don't embarrass him for the time being. Humph, I'm not that easy to beat. Suddenly, the void trembled, and Han Fei saw a primordial barbaric bull, which was thousands of meters long and had scarlet eyes, moaning. The old goat shouted, Nyodali, stop. The Bull Demon King is only at the peak of the elementary level. Why do you even use your primordial great path? Han Fei looked slightly solemn at this moment. However, Han Fei's heart was a little excited. This was exactly the feeling he wanted. Fighting with these people, there would always be new things. When he defeated all the beasts on the 10,000 Beast Island, his foundation would be absolutely solid, and he might even become an advanced venerable. Han Fei grinned. Interesting. Han Fei stepped on the ground and a large array appeared. Immediately afterward, the law of gravity descended, ready to fight this primordial phantom with the law of gravity. The ape demon roared, Brother Nyo, be careful! The law of gravity is useless. After that, Han Fei felt that between heaven and earth, an ancient and vast aura descended. A shadowy figure stomped down from the void. This blow made Han Fei feel that even his soul was trembling. Obviously, it was not a simple attack, but it contained a lot of soul attack elements. Swish! Han Fei reached out and took out the embroidery needle, shook his body, and the embroidery needle spun. The next moment, the invisible spear pierced a hole in the huge phantom. As soon as the sea-quelling bizarre treasure and the heavenly god stab appeared, blood spurted out of Nyodali's 7 orifices and splashed in the sky. Han Fei casually spun the embroidery needle a few times and directly put it into his body. He seemed to be fine. Sister, another bull said, Bull Demon King, we're both from the Water Buffalo clan. Why did you attack him so hard? Han Fei, cough cough, Nyodali coughed twice, his eyes full of surprise. Han Fei fought above his level and easily broke through his own law. He defeated him so easily. What did this mean? This meant that Han Fei was indeed a peerless heavenly talent of the Water Buffalo clan. He had never heard of the flying divine bull before. However, as long as he was a bull, anyway, he would give birth to a water buffalo in the future. As for when he would take down the Bull Demon King, Nyodali felt that it would happen sooner or later. Wasn't she just Princess Iron Fan? He would just let her be the 4th brother. Han Fei didn't know what Nyodali was thinking at this moment. Otherwise, he would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood. Han Fei said leisurely, As I said, I'm a descendant of the flying divine bull. My divine power is unparalleled. You are no match for me. On the Great Rift Gorge, the venerables were watching with great interest. Even those who were strong enough could see that something was amiss. Big Lion said, Did you see that? The Bull Demon King's weapon is a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, a real king weapon. The Serpent Woman said, Wild Lion, I'm really not surprised when it comes to weapons. After all, the Bull Demon King came from the outside world, unlike our cage, which is quite short of resources. Old Goat shook his head slightly. Jiao Mengyue, did you notice? The power of the Bull Demon King's spear just now has the ability to extinguish souls. However, he hasn't fully mastered it yet. If he can fully master it, with the help of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure, there shouldn't be many mid-level venerables who can resist his blow. Everyone was talking about it. Only Golden Tiger said impatiently, "Brothers, what's the use of just talking? True knowledge comes from actual combat. Let me try the Bull Demon King's body first and see if he has an incomplete golden body or an indestructible golden body." Swish. Ho! On the other side, Han Fei had just defeated Niu Dali. A roar shook the great rift gorge, echoing endlessly. Golden Tiger laughed. "Brother Niu, I heard that you have been stuck at the peak level of a junior venerable for a long time. Then let us help you. Let's see if we can help you jump over this hurdle." Han Fei grinned. Although this tiger was not the one he knew, it was not the tiger he knew. Although this tiger was not the one he knew, he still knew the characteristics of tigers. From their eyes to their steps, they were silently intimidating their opponent. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't be intimidated. Although the strength of this tiger was definitely above the advanced venerable level. But why should he be afraid? Han Fei shouted, "Let's fight." Swish, the two of them disappeared into the void at the same time. In the next second, they appeared in the depths of the great rift gorge. Han Fei raised his hand and the tiger's paw patted on Han Fei's body. And Han Fei's fist mark also hit the golden tiger with all his strength. Bam! Bam! The two of them smashed into the vast sea at the same time like two nuclear bombs. Above the great rift gorge, many people were still eating meat. Niu Dali was also watching carefully at this moment. Beside him, two girls with bull horns said, "Sister, are you okay?" Niu Dali shook his head. "I'm fine. This Bull Demon King is capable. He's more talented than me, and he's also stronger. My water buffalo clan's chance to procreate has arrived." A water buffalo said, "Sister, didn't he say there is a Princess Iron Fan?" Niu Dali snorted. "She is just a human woman. Compared with the rise and fall of the clan, which is more important? He will know eventually." Chapter 1530. Han Fei's arrival added a lot of vitality to the 10,000 Beast Island. At this moment, a group of people were eating barbecue and shouting above the Great Rift Gorge. Han Fei's performance was not bad, and he was a newcomer, so most of their cheers were for Han Fei. Someone said, "Bull Demon King, punch him. Punch out his big eyeballs. That's Golden Tiger's weakness." Someone laughed. "Brother Bull, scratch him. Golden Tiger is most afraid of tickling." Someone shouted, "Golden Tiger, you can't cheat. You have to suppress your strength. We have so many pairs of eyes watching." At this moment, Golden Tiger was also speechless. This group of bad friends nagged all day long. It was so annoying. However, this Bull Demon King was indeed strong. Even though he had used all kinds of techniques, he still couldn't gain any advantage. Both of them smashed him with their bodies without using any Dao. In one breath, the two of them had punched as many as 1,000 times. If it were someone with poor physique, they might have been smashed to pieces. Even so, the two of them seemed to be in high spirit. The bottom of the Great Rift Gorge was almost penetrated by the two of them. This scene made Niu Dali and the other golden bulls feel dizzy, and their eyes glittered. They were thinking that the water buffaloes were about to rise. With Han Fei's strength, he could even reach the peak in less than 1,000 years. Bam! 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 After fighting for the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Golden Tiger felt sore all over. However, Han Fei still looked as if nothing had happened. Golden Tiger roared, "It's confirmed. Brother Niu, you've cultivated an indestructible golden body?" "What? Indestructible golden body? Wow! Really? Oh my God, Brother Niu has only cultivated for 3,000 years. Indestructible golden body? Doesn't it mean that he can defeat a demi-king with just a golden body?" For a moment, all kinds of exclamations came one after another. Nyo Dali's eyelids twitched crazily. Indestructible golden body? This bull demon king's strength was beyond his expectations. Han Fei responded, to be honest. In the demon suppression tower, I fought and ate every day. If I give you 3,000 years like this, you will also be able to cultivate the indestructible golden body. Golden Tiger laughed. I am going to use my true strength. With Dao Rime on me, it won't be easy to block. Han Fei nodded slightly. That's right. Buzz! In the next moment, Han Fei discovered that the Golden Tiger, who had suppressed its strength to that of a mid-level venerable, was suddenly 30% stronger and faster. Boom! In an instant, the two of them exchanged hundreds of blows. Han Fei felt that some of his power was absorbed by the Golden Tiger every time. In this way, the Golden Tiger didn't just increase its strength. This was equivalent to the Golden Tiger borrowing Han Fei's strength to attack Han Fei. Since this was the Golden Tiger's great Dao, it would not be easily destroyed by ordinary opponents. At this time, as the Golden Tiger's opponent, if he wanted to resist this power, he would either have to display extraordinary strength or use a sharp weapon to prevent the power from dissipating. In an instant, Han Fei came up with many solutions. In fact, Han Fei could totally imitate Golden Tiger. However, he obviously couldn't act so monstrously. With his current strength, he had to think of a way to defeat the Golden Tiger's great Dao. Bam! 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 At this moment, Han Fei was beaten back again and again. Because he was only resisting and didn't attack, Han Fei was blasted into the ground. The Golden Tiger, on the other hand, fought fiercer and fiercer. The Golden Tiger roared, "Fight back! Only by fighting back can I squeeze out your strength, which will be of great help to your breakthrough." Han Fei roared, "I will certainly fight back, but not now. The breakthrough of strength depends on understanding and epiphany. Only when these 2 points are achieved can the foundation be better polished, and everything will come naturally." Han Fei was kicked here and there by the Golden Tiger like a sandbag, and he completely resisted it with his golden body. However, Han Fei's mind was thinking quickly. At this time, the old turtle said leisurely, "Why can't energy be manipulated like spiritual energy? The difference is that spiritual energy is the most direct energy, which you can see. And the energy you can't see is actually a wisp of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Where does the energy of food come from? It's the nourishment of heaven and earth. So, this energy is everywhere." Han Fei's heart trembled. Yes, he had always used spiritual energy as the source of power. Spiritual energy was actually a kind of energy. Han Fei had never considered the relationship between spiritual energy and the energy that burst out in a battle. In other words, spiritual energy could be used as food, but it could also be used as bullet. It was an all-rounder. The energy in the air could only be transformed into energy in a battle after it was circulated through the body. However, since it was a kind of energy that had been stolen, why couldn't he just detonate it? With a thought from Han Fei, the golden fist mark blasted out crazily. The sky was full of golden light, and many people shook their heads slightly. Someone said, "Brother Nyo, it seems that you haven't understood it yet." Someone said leisurely, "After all, this is the first time he has touched the great Tao of Golden Tiger. It's normal that he can't figure out a way to crack the great Tao of heaven and earth." Jiao Mengyue slightly shook her head. "I don't think so. Have you noticed that the Golden Tiger's power seems to be a bit unstable?" Bam! 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 Suddenly, everyone saw that the Golden Tiger's attacks were unstable, and an unknown power in his body was detonated. Hiss! Many people took a deep breath. How did Han Fei do it? Lei Bao said, "He deliberately detonated his power, but it was absorbed by the Golden Tiger. Then, using some unknown method, the energy absorbed by the Golden Tiger detonated." Old Yang nodded. "That's right. The Golden Tiger, who was fighting Han Fei, felt it the most. He clearly sensed that the detonated power absorbed the spiritual energy that was about to be detonated. The detonation of the spiritual energy affected the detonation of the energy in his body. Once the energy was detonated, his spiritual energy would no longer be precise, and his attacks would no longer be accurate. In a battle between venerables, it was extremely dangerous for an inaccurate attack. For a moment, the Golden Tiger restrained his power of Great Tao, and the battle between the two returned to normal. However, it was hard to tell who would win unless the Golden Tiger used his full strength. As a result, the Golden Tiger's strength gradually rose. When he became a peak-level mid-level venerable, Han Fei seemed to be struggling. However, this scene caused the crowd to sigh endlessly. It meant that Han Fei's strength was indeed a whole level higher than what he should have been. They didn't know that Han Fei simply used his own strength and didn't use the power of Great Tao. Huff! Han Fei thought to himself, the peak-level mid-level venerable is already my limit. Of course, the Golden Tiger was much more powerful than regular mid-level venerables. For example, compared to Nyodali might be relatively weaker. However, they were definitely at the level of Heaven's chosen ones, and they were very powerful. I'm done, the Golden Tiger roared and said, if we keep fighting like this, when will it end? Hey, Brother Nyo, did you really fight like this in the Demon Ceiling Tower? Were there so many experts for you to fight in the Demon Ceiling Tower? Han Fei said with a smile, there were certainly few experts, but I wasn't one when I went in. I'm only at the Seeker level. Speaking of explorers, there are a lot of them. The Golden Tiger stretched his body and looked at the Ape Fiend. The Ape Fiend grinned. Brother Nyo, can you still fight? Han Fei grinned. I can. Keep fighting. The battle with the Ape Fiend obviously had no result. The strength of the Ape Fiend was similar to that of the Golden Tiger. Therefore, the final battle was reduced to the size of a fist. It seemed that both of them were bruised and swollen. Han Fei lived like this for more than 10 days. Every day, Han Fei barbecued and everyone ate. After eating and drinking, the battle began. All the venerables watched the battle. Han Fei didn't stop for a moment. He just kept fighting and fighting. On this day, Han Fei fought with the last venerable deer named Lu Han for 3,000 rounds. The 100 venerables who didn't go out on the Beast Island had all been defeated by Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at Nyodali. Nyodali rolled his eyes. No. Han Fei looked at the Golden Tiger again. The Golden Tiger curled his lips and said, boring. No. You are a lunatic. You are simply a war maniac. You have fought more than 100 battles, but you still haven't made a breakthrough. Seeing that no one was fighting, Han Fei stopped. In the past 10 days, he had benefited a lot. He had been beaten countless times and beaten back countless times. He had comprehended the great chaos of many demonic beasts here. With the comparison, Han Fei was more sure that his great chaos were very strong, ridiculously strong. After landing, Han Fei picked up a piece of barbecue and asked, "Are you sure you don't want to fight?" Hum, a group of people shook their heads. What's the point of fighting? You are just an immortal cockroach. Relying on your indestructible golden body, you can fight anyone. Even if you suppress your strength, you can still fight evenly with them. Jiao Mengyue said, Brother Nyo, if you want to fight, there are plenty of places. Why don't you go to fight the sea demons or the forest of horrors? With your strength, you can easily kill your opponent when they least expect it. Han Fei had been waiting for this. However, he still said, That's good. However, I may need to cultivate in seclusion for a few months. He had comprehended too many things recently. If I can master all of them, maybe I can really break through to the peak-level junior venerable. Nyodali said, Go to my place. Han Fei was about to refuse, when he heard Nyodali say, I just want you to cultivate in seclusion. No one will disturb you. Do you think I will eat you? Han Fei thought for a moment and agreed. Anyway, his identity as a member of the Water Buffalo clan had been confirmed. Even if he was found out, Nyodali would reduce his suspicion for the sake of the Water Buffalo clan. Thinking so, Han Fei immediately said, "Okay. Thank you for your hospitality." First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1531. He could learn from others' strengths and make up for his shortcomings by fighting with those in the same realm or even higher realm. Han Fei's seclusion time had always been short. In Nyodali's place, Han Fei set up a seal and cultivated in seclusion for a whole month. During this month, Han Fei certainly spent it in Forge the Universe. In the previous dozens of days of battles, Han Fei had learned too many things and needed to simulate them again and again to gain insights one by one. During this month, Han Fei didn't just spend 4 months. It took him more than half a year. In the first 8 days, Han Fei asked Little White to spit out a wisp of chaotic energy. Then, he upgraded the time flow in Forge the Universe to 8 times that of the outside world. When the time flow in Forge the Universe became 8 times that of the outside world, this was a very obvious double growth pattern. If he wanted to continue to improve Forge the Universe, the required chaotic energy would become 100 wisps. The next time he upgraded it, the time flow here would become 16 times faster. What did that mean? It meant that Han Fei's 1 year of cultivation was equivalent to 16 years of cultivation for others. Perhaps for some experts, 16 years passed in the blink of an eye. For people like Old Turtle, it might not even be enough time to take a nap. However, for Han Fei it was a very long time. From the time he first came to the Scattered Stars Island until now, it had been less than 16 years. He, on the other hand, had grown from a dangling fisher to a venerable. Of course, the reason why he grew so fast was related to Old Han and the others and what he had experienced. If he had been cultivating in Forge the Universe, his growth might not have been so fast. However, the change in the flow of time was of great benefit to him. However, how could he get these 100 wisps of chaotic energy? Did he have to rely on Little White to spit out 1 wisp a month? Even if Little White completely became a machine that could spit out chaotic energy, it would take more than 8 years. Even if Little White could spit out chaotic energy in Forge the Universe, he would have to wait for a year in the outside world. However, Han Fei didn't want to put all his hopes on Little White. He had become a venerable, but he had never had time to study how a venerable absorbed chaotic energy. At this moment, Han Fei only left 3 wisps of chaotic energy on him in case of emergencies. Before leaving Forge the Universe, Han Fei sat cross-legged on the ground, and a strand of hair-like chaotic air danced on his fingertips, moving from his left hand to his right hand, and then from his right hand to his left hand. With a thought, Little Black and Little White fused and looked at it with the yin-yang divine eyes, but they still couldn't see through the chaotic gas. Han Fei murmured, "This is the essence of the energy of heaven and earth. In fact, it is very similar to the invisible power of the Great Path contained in spiritual energy." Seeing that Han Fei was studying the chaotic energy, the old turtle said, "You're not wrong, but if you want to see through the chaotic energy from spiritual energy, you need to disassemble the spiritual energy better and better. The reason why you can feel the connection between primal chaos aura and spiritual chi is because your spiritual chi disassembly rate is over 70%. However, this is far from enough." Han Fei couldn't help but smile. "How is that enough?" The old tortoise said unhurriedly, "It won't be enough. As the spiritual chi disassembly rate gets higher and higher, it will just be easier for you to absorb the chaotic energy. Even if the spiritual chi disassembly rate exceeds 90%, it is impossible to gather a wisp of chaotic energy in just a few days." Han Fei couldn't help but frown. "What about kings?" The old turtle said, "I'm talking about venerables. When you reach the Pioneer Sea realm, it will be different. However, if you want to become a king, you still need to accumulate a lot of chaotic energy. Otherwise, you won't have enough power to support you to become a king." Han Fei pondered. According to what the old turtle said, It seemed that he would need a lot of chaotic energy in the future. However, the old turtle then added, "It's useless for you to just look at this wisp of chaotic energy now. Ever since you got your hands on the chaos chi, you haven't done any serious research on it. When you were in the Chu sect, you detonated 2 strands, but that was not enough. You have to experience its power firsthand." Han Fei nodded slightly. Soon, Niu Dali's 2 sisters were named Niu Kursin and Niu Panpan. At this moment, the 3 of them were chatting outside the cave house. Niu Panpan said, "Sister, after all, this bull demon king has just come to our beast island. Isn't it not good for us to be too close?" Niu Kursin said angrily, "Yes, sister." That bull demon king was infuriated. "We 3 sisters have been taken advantage of by him, but he seems to have suffered a big loss." Niu Dali shook his head slightly and said, "For the rise of the Buffalo clan, it is acceptable in any case. After all, he is the only bull we have met so far. The main thing is, we have no choice." Niu Kursin said in annoyance, "Sister, can we really not get out of this cage? Since there is the bull demon king in the outside world, there must be other bulls, right?" Niu Panpan nodded repeatedly. "Yes, sister. That bull demon king is too arrogant. Although he has the bloodline of the divine flying bull and seems to be very strong, he is still infuriating." Niu Dali said, "Okay, now is not the time to talk about this. This bull demon king has just come to the Beast Island. If he really survives for thousands of years, I am afraid it will be different. This person is extremely arrogant and very conceited. Even if we want to carry on the family line with him, we can't do it in a short time." Han Fei, who had just come out of seclusion, was dumbfounded at the moment. "If I had known this, I wouldn't have turned into a buffalo." The seal was lifted, and Han Fei's burly figure walked out of the seal, only to see Niu Dali and the other 2 looking at him. Niu Dali wondered, "So fast? After fighting 100 venerables in a month, you have comprehended all aspects?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "I have benefited a lot from comprehending it every day. I have comprehended everything that should be comprehended." Of course, Niu Dali knew why Han Fei wanted to fight them one by one. In fact, who didn't know? However, this kind of improvement was limited. Han Fei had been imprisoned for so long. After coming out, it was completely possible for him to break through to the junior venerable realm by fighting others. Even in the eyes of the venerables, at Han Fei's level, breaking through to the intermediate venerable realm might only take an instant. Therefore, Han Fei had fought 100 venerables in a row and still hadn't made a breakthrough after seclusion, which surprised everyone. However, these venerables didn't know that if Han Fei really wanted to break through to the junior peak level, he could have done so long ago. However, the path that Han Fei took didn't allow him to make a breakthrough so casually. If he really did that, Han Fei felt that one day, he would also fade into the crowd and become a heavenly talent in everyone's eyes. However, becoming a heavenly talent? That would be even more difficult. After this seclusion, Han Fei only improved his strength by a few dozen times. As for the rest, even his spiritual power didn't break through by much. However, Han Fei's comprehensive strength had decreased a lot. This point couldn't be directly expressed by data. Seeing that there seemed to be a little joy in Han Fei's eyes, Niu Dali couldn't help but look at Han Fei, raised his head and said, "Why, do you still want to go and fight with them?" Han Fei shook his head slightly and said, "No. The rest is not something that can be brought to me by fighting. I need to test it in a life-and-death battle." Han Fei put on a cold smile. "Ordinary battles are no longer beneficial to me. A life-and-death battle will not break out among our own people. Then, I've been suppressed by the sea demons for more than 2,700 years. Now that I'm finally out, it's time to settle the score." At this moment, Han Fei's eyes were full of fanaticism and surging blood, which stunned Niu Dali. Niu Dali said, "Well, the sea demons that suppressed you may not be the same as the sea demons in Black Blood City. Besides, although you are indeed not weak, your limit is only the peak level of an intermediate venerable. Once you really start a life and death battle with an advanced venerable, you are likely to die. Han Fei sneered. Whether it's the White Shell Royal City or Black Blood City, they all belong to the sea race and are all sea demons. If you are a siren, you are my enemy. Also, who told you that my real strength is only at the peak level of an intermediate venerable? Niu Dali was stunned. What did Han Fei mean? It was natural for him to hate sea demons. If he were trapped for thousands of years, he would definitely take revenge too. However, a month ago, Han Fei didn't seem to be holding back in the battle. In those battles, apart from proving that he was very good at fighting, he didn't show any strength that could compete with an advanced venerable. Could it be that in the battle a month ago, Han Fei suppressed his strength? At this moment, the void trembled, and Crocodile Tai walked out of it. Crocodile Tai said with a smile, "Brother Niu, it seems that the battle a month ago was not enough. I didn't force you to make a breakthrough." Han Fei smiled and said, "I've benefited a lot." Niu Dali said, "Crocodile Tai, how did you know that the Bull Demon King just came out of seclusion?" Crocodile Tai said with a smile, "I can't watch you all the time. It was Old Goat who knew that Brother Niu had come out of seclusion and asked me to ask Brother Niu a question." Han Fei thought of Old Goat. That guy's strength was unfathomable. He guessed that he should be half a king. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "What's the question?" Crocodile Tai said, "Old Goat wants to know if you need to go to the immortal city of the humans because you have the bloodline of humans. I heard that the humans are not in a good situation now, and because they cultivate many immortal creatures, although they don't fight against us, they have alienated us from the Beast Island." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly and then shook his head decisively. "No. Although I have come into contact with humans in the Demon Suppressing Tower, my top priority now is to improve my strength. Instead of going to the immortal city of the humans, I might as well go to battle. I want to feel the power of the sea demons in the Black Blood City." "Ha ha ha! I knew it. Brother Niu, you definitely won't go to the immortal city. That place is gloomy. It's really not a good place to go." With that, Crocodile Tai turned his head and looked at the void. "Old Goat, did you see that? Brother Niu is not interested in the immortal city of the humans, right?" Old Goat's voice came leisurely. "I was just asking. Bull Demon King, since you don't want to go to the human side, do as you please. You have seen the venerables on the Beast Island. You can go to the Life and Death Gorge and have a look. Maybe it will help you make a breakthrough." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1532. Han Fei set off with Niu Dali and the other two. Crocodile Tai and the others did not follow. Just like what old Yang, who was also Yang Shinji, had said, other than the two battlefronts, the venerables who stayed behind to guard the 10,000 Beasts Island also had to go out to patrol the sea from time to time. This patrol range was much larger than Han Fei had imagined. Under normal circumstances, it would take an Exalt Realm expert half a month to patrol the ocean. In fact, he knew what they were patrolling for. After all, the Monster Beast Alliance ruled over a large area. There were a lot of marine creatures in this area. It wouldn't be a big deal if these creatures were only explorers. However, if they tried to reach Exalted Realm, they would immediately be marked as targets to be killed. At least, if Han Fei was in power, he would do the same. As for this Life and Death Gorge, it was also the place where the Myriad Beast Island and Black Blood City fought. Why was it called the Life and Death Gorge? Niu Dali explained, "The Life and Death Gorge is the lowest level of the entire cage. It's less than 200,000 miles wide. Both sides were sealed cages, so that became the place where the Demon Beast Alliance and Black Blood City fought." Han Fei frowned slightly. "Is Black Blood City very strong? How many venerables have they and our Demonic Beast Alliance arranged at the Life and Death Gorge?" Nyodali said in a sweet voice, "Don't ever underestimate Blackblood City. The number of venerables in Blackblood City is second only to our Myriad Beast Island. Including you, our Myriad Beast Island now has 298, while Blackblood City has 287. Han Fei thought to himself, it was 287 before, but now it may be less than 280. Nevertheless, he still asked, "How are you so sure? There are so many venerable ones?" Nyodali, "There's Old Goat doing the calculations. That's Old Goat's great Tao divination." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. "You can calculate how many venerables there are? If the Old Goat could even predict this, would it be able to predict that there was something wrong with him?" Han Fei was just thinking about that when the old turtle said, "Don't worry. You're a person with great luck, and there's something wrong with your fate. Therefore, your fate is messed up and there is no way to calculate it." Hearing what the old turtle said, Han Fei realized that it was indeed hard to calculate his strange background. Old Han wasn't calculating, but planning. He had included everything in his plan, except for himself. Therefore, Old Goat might have asked Crocodile Tai to come and ask him just to test him. He wanted to see how he would react to the human race. However, Han Fei clearly knew that the forces inside the Wall of Death had been fighting against each other for tens of thousands of years. The fact that the human race had yet to go extinct meant that they could still persevere. Going alone? It was useless. Buzz. Han Fei and Nyodali stepped into another teleportation array. After leaving the teleportation formation, Zhang Xian continued flying forward. This was already the 8th teleportation array they had passed. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "How far is the Life and Death Gorge?" Nyodali said, "We're only halfway there." Han Fei thought of something and calculated secretly. Every time he and Nyodali left the teleportation formation, the distance they flew was about 100,000 miles. Based on his understanding of teleportation arrays, the teleportation array constructed by the Demon Beast Alliance could only teleport a distance of 200,000 kilometers at most. After all, they were just demon beasts, not as good at arrays as human spirit gatherers. Moreover, he also saw many abandoned teleportation arrays along the way. Thinking about it, it must have been abandoned for some other reason. In this way, according to 15 teleportation arrays, the distance of teleportation arrays alone was about 3 million kilometers. Plus the distance between teleportation arrays, the distance from the Beast Island to the Life and Death Gorge was about 4 million to 5 million kilometers. According to Nyodali, there were cages on both sides of this road. Especially on the side of the Life and Death Gorge, its width was only 200,000 kilometers. For venerables, this was not a distance at all. With the teleportation array, it wouldn't waste much time. About less than half an hour later, Han Fei and Nyodali had already arrived at the so-called Life and Death Gorge. As soon as they entered the Life and Death Gorge, Han Fei felt a lot of death energy. The spiritual energy and energy here were even more violent, and Han Fei could even feel the weak water from the Life and Death Gorge. Swish, swish. As soon as they came out of the teleportation array and flew forward for about 50,000 kilometers, a perception swept over them. When these perceptions swept over, there was also a voice. "It's really the bull of the Water Buffalo clan. Brother Bull Demon King, I thought it would be a long time before we could meet again. But it's only been more than a month, and we've already met." One after another, venerables walked out of the void. Among them, the one in the lead turned out to be a centaur? Yes, Han Fei was dumbfounded. You can be a human or a horse, but why do you have a centaur holding a death scythe in your hand? What's going on? In addition to this brother horse, Han Fei also saw a creature with scales all over its body and a bit like a donkey. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What kind of creature is this? A month ago, he fought with a female Qilin on the Beast Island. Now, looking at this horse, this donkey. Suddenly, Han Fei had an incredible guess in his heart. Seeing Han Fei's puzzled expression, the centaur immediately smiled and said, "Little brother Bull Demon King, I am the commander of the Life and Death Gorge. Next to me, this is the most talented of my sons. Now, he has become a venerable, and his name is Ma Qilin." In Han Fei's heart, there seemed to be 10,000 iron-head fish galloping before. He was still thinking about a question, that was, why were there so many powerful creatures on the Beast Island? Logically speaking, it was extremely difficult to become a venerable. To maintain the rule of the beasts, they had to keep reproducing. Han Fei thought they were making little beasts for no reason. However, he never expected that they were also making little beasts. Of course, although he was very surprised in his heart. But on the surface, Han Fei grinned and said, "Oh, Demon King, nice to meet you, Commander Ma. Just now I was wondering what kind of creature Brother Qilin is. You look so handsome." Ma Qilin seemed to be rarely praised. Hearing Han Fei's praise, his eyes immediately lit up. "Brother Bull, you flatter me." Han Fei smiled and said, "Not at all. In my inherited memory, Brother Qilin's handsome appearance is really extraordinary. I really envy you." Ma Yuhan and Niu Dali were both stunned. And the others who had just arrived were also slightly stunned. What happened? Did the Bull Demon King and Ma Qilin hit it off? Of course, Han Fei wouldn't deliberately hit it off with Ma Qilin. It was just the first time they met. However, it was not good to be too polite. So Han Fei immediately turned his eyes to the others. Then, Han Fei saw a cyan fox, a rhinoceros, and most of them appeared in human form. Han Fei guessed that there were probably wild boars and cats. Among them, there was a little girl who seemed to be only 7 or 8 years old. What kind of creature was she? She had 2 ears on her head, but they didn't look like rabbit ears. Han Fei cupped his hands. "Everyone, I'm the Bull Demon King, a junior peak-level venerable. I'm good at many combat techniques. Nice to meet you." Immediately, the cyan fox responded, "Brother Bull, when Lightning came to ask Dolly for help this morning, she already told us." "Well, I'm Greenwood, an intermediate venerable, not yet a peak-level venerable." The 7 or 8-year-old girl immediately said, "Brother Bull, I'm White Ferret, an advanced venerable." A fat man said, "Brother Bull, I'm Fat 7, a junior peak-level venerable." For a moment, everyone was talking at once. However, what really shocked Han Fei was the little girl who seemed to be only 7 or 8 years old. Among all of them, this little girl had the most complete transformation. Except for her 2 cute ears, she was a perfect human. Unfortunately, this little girl called him Brother Bull? Damn it, who could resist her? Ma Yuhan said, "Okay, let's disperse for the time being. Don't let the sea demons find out anything. Bull Demon King, you've just arrived. Why don't you watch a few battles and see the situation in the Life and Death Gorge first?" Han Fei immediately retorted, "Commander Ma, I think we may be able to take this opportunity to kill 3 or 5 sea demon venerables. What do you think?" The venerables who were about to leave all turned around and looked at Han Fei in surprise. The little girl, the white ferret, tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. "Brother Bull, it's easy for you to say. Do you think it's easy to kill venerables? Kill 3 or 5 of them." Ma Qilin also said, "Brother Bull, you can't play in the army." Ma Yuhan flipped his hair and then looked at Han Fei. "Bull Demon King, do you mean you're going to fight?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "I'm new here, so I don't know those sea demons. I think I can take this opportunity to kill 3 of them." Hiss, the group of people all took in a deep breath. Niu Dali said to Han Fei telepathically, not afraid that Ma Yuhan would hear him. She said, "Are you crazy? Do you think it's easy to kill venerables?" Ma Yuhan looked at Han Fei again. "In that case, let's try the next battle first. In the past 2 years, Black Blood City hasn't fought many battles. Let's see why they don't want to fight anymore." Han Fei and Ma Yuhan looked at each other. Of the two, one was sizing him up, and the other was looking at him proudly. The others seemed to notice something subtle. The corners of the white ferret's mouth curled up. Interesting. Third update. Please vote. I'm going home late today. I'll update later. End of this chapter.